Hi, I'm Carlin Borisenko. In early 2020, I was the knitting Democrat who accidentally went viral on the internet for going to a Trump rally and then left the party. I became the conservative darling, was on all the shows, traveled around the country, and then realized that conservatives were no better than Democrats. If there's one thing that I've learned, it's that both political tribes are two sides of the same coin. But it wasn't all bad. On my journey, I became obsessed with understanding the woke ideology and the culture war. I broke the story of the city of Seattle doing segregated training with its employees.
How bad has this stuff become? The city of Seattle has now put out, I'm not kidding you, this is according to Dr. Carolyn Borisenko, who's an organizational psychologist. The city of Seattle asked its white employees to voluntarily spend a day off in a training about their internalized racial superiority.
I broke the story that led to the first ever federal lawsuit against critical race theory in the schools. I broke the Coke Be Less White story, one of the biggest anti-woke stories of all time. It got over 30 million views. Coca-Cola's corporate headquarters even had to change their outgoing voicemail.
Throughout the past few days, you may have seen inaccurate reporting on the content of our recently launched diversity, equity, and inclusion training program.
I exposed the schools in Burlington, Vermont for grooming middle school children live on the internet. They called me an unwoke cult leader for that. And the Vermont Human Rights Commission slandered me publicly as being a hate channel. I even got called a hero in Breitbart for exposing that the Washington Post was writing a hit piece on Christopher Rufo. I have broken story after story after story about what's going on in the public schools, from Cambridge, Massachusetts, to autistic sex education, to the Department of Education in Michigan, literally training teachers all over the state how to groom children. I wrote a book called Actively Unwoke, the ultimate guide for fighting back against the woke insanity in your life. I host a podcast all about fighting back, and I'm downloading all of my knowledge to you on my Substack, carlin.substack.com. The world is a crazy place. We are literally surrounded by cults on all sides. On this show, we're going to do a deep dive into all aspects of the culture war, and I will show you the dark, dystopian underbellies on both sides. Here are the commitments I'll make to you. I will always tell you the truth. I will always bring you receipts. And if you stick with me, I promise you will see the world differently. Welcome to the cult. Please mount that like button for me and subscribe if you feel so inclined. What up, everyone? Happy Friday. Welcome to Happy Hour. I apologize for starting about 15 minutes late, but it's been a weird day. It's been a weird week. Has anyone else had this? And by the way, my sound is all messed up, and I don't know. Can you guys tell me if my sound sounds shitty on your end? Because I feel like something happened to, my microphone sounds fine on my end, and then I listen back to videos, and I'm like, why does my sound so crazy? So I feel like there's some maybe I've dropped the thing I use to process the sound on the microphone on the floor one too many times, because every once in a while, okay, people are saying the sound sounds fine. I'm getting a little self-conscious. I don't know. Whatever. I don't understand. I'm not quite as bad at technology as the socialists are, but I still kind of suck at technology. If I'm honest, it's a function of getting older. I can't help it. It has been a weird week. Has anyone else felt this? It's been a weird week. It's been full of ups and downs and backs and forths and heres and theres. And I've just been feeling weird. I don't know. Maybe it was just one of those weeks where I needed to take it a little bit easier. But even today, can I just take the first few moments of happy hour and talk about my feelings for a second? Just can we make it all about me? Of course, I'm a massive narcissist on the internet, as you guys all know. So can we just make it all about me for a second? Even all day today, I've been dealing with just unnecessary bullshit and drama. And it's just the same stuff, over and over and over and over and over and over and over. And I was supposed to have phone calls with people today, and they got usurped by bullshit and drama. And it's just God damn, man. God damn. What is wrong with people? I just don't get it. I don't get it. I'm just trying to chill over here, being in my little corner of the internet, not saying anything to anyone. And then all of a sudden, people are posting Photoshop pictures of me on Twitter looking crazy, or like they're reading about things that happened like years ago that they like. It's like, can you guys get over it? Do you ever move on with life? Do you ever, literally ever, move on with life? Do people on the internet not understand that like the internet is not real? The internet is not real. The relationships that we have, okay, I'm not saying I've never had good relationships on the internet, but like by and large, and I don't mean any offense to this, from anyone, but like by and large, the relationships that you make on the internet, like they're not fucking real. They're not. I'm sorry. Every once in a while, real people come along, and I feel like I've made some good friends online and stuff like that, but people who get so wrapped up in it and they're like they make it the end all be all of everything and they take everything so seriously and they never let their hair down and have fun. I'm just like, I just don't understand you. I really, 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 really don't understand you. It's like, I don't know. I don't want to go on too long about okay, maybe let's share a couple more feelings. I'm just like, because again, this is like I had stuff I wanted to do today, man. I thought you have met me in real life, Kino. Yeah, I'm not saying that there are like there are people that I've met in real life that like I do consider friends. Consider Kino to be a friend. And I even consider some of the people that I've never met in real life, but that have been in my community for 2, 3, 4, 5 years. Like, well, not 5 years, but 2, 3, 4 years. Like, I consider, many of them to be friends as well. But it's just like, I don't know. I think that I don't have a whole lot of hope for humanity the way things are going. And I'm just kind of like, I just want to chill and I just want to have good conversations with good people who are not crazy. And I don't care about being famous on the internet, and like a lot of people who want to be famous on the internet. And I just want to relax and I just want to watch socialism and I just want to watch leftist stuff and maybe occasionally have conversations with other people that I think have good energy on the internet and that possibly have been like fucked over in the same similar fashion that I've been fucked over. Like, did you guys enjoy the conversation last night that I had with Big Tech? Did you guys enjoy that? I don't know. I was trying to figure out for the longest time. You did. I really enjoyed I thought it was fine. I was trying to figure out for the longest time. I was like, is he manipulating me? Like this has been like, I mean, I like really like I was like he's bantering with me and I'll banter back to him and that's fine, but like and this is how the internet fucks with you. Because I was like, how, like, why is he manipulating me? Why is he doing this? What does he want? Like for the longest time. And like last night, I feel like I finally am like, okay, I don't actually think he's manipulating me. I don't think so. Oh, Naptown, here you are, causing trouble again. Causing trouble again. But even that, it fucks with your head after a while. It's like I can't even talk to anyone without feeling like I'm being manipulated or like psychologically fucked with. And I enjoyed the conversation last night, and I don't know, we'll see, I guess, if stuff like that happens again, but like I feel like I can't even have just like casual conversations on the internet with people and joke around and banter without someone on the internet losing their goddamn shit about it, and it makes no sense. It's like almost immediately after that conversation, of course, people were already reacting to it and being like, "Yeah, Carolyn did." I'm like, "Bro, I'm just chilling. I'm just chilling. Relax. Not everything has to be serious, okay?" Anyway, so I'm in a weird place today. It's been a weird day. I've been dealing with nonsense all last night. Or not all last night. Last night was fine, but like all this morning, which for some reason feels like last night to me. And now we're going to talk about BDSM and football. Is everyone ready for that? Everyone ready to talk about BDSM and football? Can we just move on? I don't know. The internet is full of informers. Ain't that the truth? Ain't that the truth? Bill, I DM'd you that Aussie socialist thing the other night, and the next day I checked my phone and Twitter had unfollowed me from your. That's weird, Bill. Because I did see you followed me on Twitter But like that you like I hear this crap. I hate the internet so much. Like I get like YouTube unsubscribes people from my channel every single day. They don't know that they're being unsubscribed. They find out later. They're like, why do you never show up in my feed anymore, Carlin? And I'm like, well, did you check to make sure YouTube didn't unsubscribe you? And they're like, oh wow, YouTube unsubscribed me. I'm like, there you go. That's why I'm not showing up in your feed. Sorry, I can't do anything about it, man. Twitter, the same thing. Although I kind of feel like I do feel like my Twitter account has been growing actually weirdly because I'm not like really trying to grow it or anything. So I don't know. I kind of thought that Twitter was turning around, but you know, we're going back to the days of yore. I don't think it'll be as bad as it was, but who knows? Anyway, we're going to talk about BDSM and football today. I have no idea what the two have in common, but I do know that the University of Chicago, that crazy center for the study of gender and sexuality at the University of Chicago 5 years ago. So this was on June 28th, 2018. 5 years ago. Had a presentation called Kink and Football, Consent and Dignity. Now, I have no idea what kink has to do with football, but we do know that socialists are obsessed with BDSM, so it makes sense that there would be some sort of socialist thing about kink. I don't know how it relates to non-binary football, perhaps. I guess we'll find out. Are we done with groypers finally? I mean, I don't mind groypers. I really don't. Like, okay, some groypers are assholes and like they're children, and it's kind of one of those things where like I feel like there have been some nice groypers. There are groypers that still hang out. I mean, I don't mind if someone's 25 years old and a virgin. That's like their business. It's not mine, but I think that some of them are nice. Whatever. I've hardly ever and the thing of it is too is like I feel like I'm in this place where just like if you just like I don't care what people believe anymore, man. I don't care. If you just want to be chill and hang out and talk about stuff I'm interested in on the internet and you don't want to cause problems, like come hang out. But if you're going to cause bullshit and nonsense and just and play these gotcha games and blood sports and twisting things out of context to try to destroy people on the internet because that makes you feel like you're compensating for like, you know, like you've compensated for having an obviously small penis, like fine. Like, but I just don't want to be around that. So like, I don't care if the groypers want to come and hang out and be chill, they can come out and hang out and be chill. If they don't want to, they cannot, and we can block them and not have to deal with them anymore. That's how I feel about it. I'm hardly ever on Twitter, but I noticed the other day when I tagged you in a tweet, I was unsubbed. Isn't that interesting? Why are people getting unfollowed from my Twitter account? I don't even have any sort of label on my Twitter account that I know of. Whatever. Ain't nothing I can do. Ain't nothing I can do. Well, that's because Octogroiper is bought. That's bought. Like, Octogroiper is not a real groiper. Rottweiler, unrelated stuff. The LGB Alliance released a new video earlier called Don't Call Me Queer, and I thought they were getting the cue right, but no, it's about of course it's about separating teeth. Like, no one understands this stuff. Even Chris Rufo, he posted something on Twitter about like oh, what was it? Hang on. Let me get it up on my screen. This might be a little bit more of a casual stream today, just, you know, because what did Rufo post on Twitter that I took umbrage with? I posted about it. Oh, I might react to Deb's video about why cameras in classrooms won't help, which is obviously just Deb being bitter because I came up with the idea of cameras in classrooms and she did not. But I might react to that later. We'll see. What the hell did Rufo post that I commented on? It wasn't that far back. What did he post that I commented on? I think it was before. Hang on. We're going for a casual stream today, guys. Casual stream. Here it is. He said he was talking about the Kristen Stewart thing, and like this is again conservatives getting caught in a trap That's all this is conservatives getting caught in a trap, because Rolling Stone magazine did this queer thing about Kristen Stewart and posted a picture of her dressed like obviously queerly, and she has the socialist haircut, and she has the bad socialist line tattoos, the bad like black line tattoos. So like we know she's in like the queer ideology. We know that, which is, you know, sad, but like not unexpected, whatever, that's her business. But like Rolling Stone did this whole piece about it, and Kristen Stewart's like, you guys are just all upset because I'm gay, when in fact no one actually cares that Kristen Stewart eats pussy. No one cares. Literally no one cares. But here we are, and conservatives had to overreact to it, which is exactly and precisely what Rolling Stone wanted. It is exactly and precisely what Rolling Stone wanted when they ran this story in the first place, was to get conservatives reeing on Twitter about it. And then they followed up with a story titled, "Right Wingers Are Terrified of Our Gay Kristen Stewart Cover." Do you think they didn't already have this planned? By the way, this is the conservative right walking into a trap every goddamn time. Every time. Every time. Every time. And Rufo tweeted it, and he said, Rolling Stone might have been transgressive 50 years ago, but now it reprints social media posts and polices critics for dead naming. Now, Rufo's not wrong about what they did, but what Rufo doesn't understand is that they consider queer to be transgressive. The entire point of queer is that it's transgressive. I actually thought the pictures were cool. You might not like the content. You might not like the person. I actually thought beyond me not liking the subject matter, I thought the pictures were cool. I did. I thought they were edgy. I thought they were punk. I thought they were cool. It had a vibe I liked. I don't like the content, but like, you know, those are two separate things. Anyway, my point is that queer is transgressive. How the left views queer is transgressive. That is the entire point of queer. Queer is not about being trans. It's not about being gay, no matter what Kristen Stewart says. It's not about being gay at all. It's not about being trans. It's not about what genitals you have. It's not about who you sleep with. It's not about any of those things. Queer is a far left political ideology. That's all it is. The entire goal of queer is to disrupt normativity. And so Rufo is looking at this, and I understand why he's doing it, but Rufo is looking at this through the lens of like, you know, Rolling Stone used to be the counterculture. Well, they consider queer to be the counterculture. Just because conservatives don't consider queer to be the counterculture does not mean that the left does not consider queer to be the counterculture. And this is the thing. It's like neither side wants to understand each other. Neither side wants to take the time to understand the perspective of another. And it's just like this constant game of ping pong, back and forth and back and forth and back and forth, in which everyone's going like this and no one is listening to each other and everyone is just fighting over bullshit and nonsense, and it's boring. It's boring. So I was a little disappointed that Rufo seemed, and I know he doesn't misunderstand this, is the thing. Like, I know he doesn't misunderstand this, but I think that, I don't know if he's just like pandering to conservatives or if he just didn't think through the logical conclusion of what he was saying. But I know that Rufo understands that queer is a far left ideology. I know that he understands that the left believes that queer is designed to disrupt normativity. But it's like he puts this stuff out and it's like, okay, well, let's just reinforce the conservative talking point du jour. I mean, why? Anyway, we got some super chats coming in. Kino says, God damn, the queer Marxists are pissed at me. Thanks for that playbook to trigger them. Cheers. Yeah, have fun with that, Kino. Have fun. Enjoy. They get it wrong because they have morons like Billboard Chris who make everything trans. I mean, it's like I have like, you know, they either make it all about trans, which really is not even the issue. Adults should be able to do whatever they want. If you don't want to like trans people, I guess like fine, but like Like, I don't care if people are trans. I don't want kids to be medicalized, but I don't care if adults do what they want to do with their bodies. Conservatives can't get their heads around that. I don't care if people are gay. It makes no difference to me who you fuck at all. As long as you're not making me do anything I don't want to do, I don't care. I don't care. I don't know why it's such a big deal. But no, we have to re about conservative, social conservative bullshit when only like 30% of adults are social conservatives. So you're never going to win an election that way. But that doesn't seem to matter. Anyway, I don't really have a whole long introduction today for other things, other than I just want to tell everyone that we are doing a special Valentine's Day edition of Socialism Saturday tomorrow. We'll be watching a presentation from The Red Nation, which I guess is a podcast run by Indigenous Folks, FOLX. And the name of that presentation is Romantic Love is a Weapon of Capitalism. So a special Valentine's Day edition. I am looking forward to that. Remember, on Saturdays, we do Socialism Saturday at 6 p.m., not at 5 p.m., 6 p.m., because it's my weekend too, and I have other stuff to do on Saturdays. And so I will see you guys tomorrow at 6 p.m. for that. And I'm not going to do a big plug about the Substack or the merch store today. You guys want to check out the Substack, please make sure you're subscribed. Carlyn, KARLYN.substack.com. Unwokeart.com is my merch store. Please make sure, go check it out if you want to support the work I'm doing. Cool. I just don't feel like shilling right now. Don't feel like it. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna talk about some beer, and then you got this beer can. Literally, I put my hand on it, and it popped up like that. I'm like, what the fuck is in this beer can? It's like there's a creature in this beer can that, like, literally, it was just sitting here, and I put my hand on it, and it popped up like that. This wasn't like this a second ago. What the fuck is in this beer can? I've never seen that happen before. What? Yeah, I feel like it's gonna explode. What is there a creature in here that's trying to escape? Wow. Okay. Well, because this is happy hour, we do have a tradition on happy hour for Fridays to celebrate that we made it through another week. I'm really creeped out by this beer can now. We celebrating that we made it through another week by drinking some beer. And we have a tradition that I go to the craft beer store and I get 4 beers, not for any other reason than there are 4 beers in one of those ring things. And it's a nice even number. And I prefer even numbers to odd. So it's just the way it goes. And I come back and I tell you guys about the beer, and then you guys vote on which beer I drink first. And the first one today is actually the almost exploding can beer, because I'm going from order of light to dark. This is called Color Cloud Pink. This is a Berliner Weiss with pink guava, dragon fruit, and passion fruit. Let's see. Does it say anything? It's from Equilibrium Brewery. Where is Equilibrium out of? Where are they out of? It doesn't say. Equilibrium Brewery, Color Cloud Pink. That is number 1. That's going to be a light, kind of fruity flavored beer. So we'll do that number 1. Number 2 is from one of my favorite breweries, which is Magnify Brewing Company, which I think is out of Colorado. Are they out of Colorado? Nope, New Jersey. Wrong. I was mixing them up with. Which one was I mixing them up with? I forget. There's a Drecker, maybe. Drecker's out of Colorado. Anyway, Magnify Brewing Company is a great brewery. They do a lot of really good sours. And this is an imperial sour, which means it's more alcoholic than... Holy shit. I didn't realize how alcoholic this beer was when I picked it. It's 11%. Focus. Focus, camera. Focus. There it goes. 11% alcohol. 11%. I didn't realize that. I thought I was getting like an 8%er or something like that. So this is called R&R, and this is a pink lemonade inspired imperial sour ale brewed with lemons, raspberries, and strawberries. That is choice number 2. I was already like, we don't need to hear any more, Carlin. We're voting for that one. We want you to get drunk. I'm like, okay, thanks, guys. Actually, this is the one that I'm most excited about, if my opinion means anything, which I know it doesn't. But this is actually the one I'm most excited about because I love blonde stouts. I so rarely get to have blonde stouts. Like not a lot of breweries make blonde stouts, but there is one that I found today from Last Chair Brewery out of New Hampshire. What? And it's called Cannonball, and it is a coffee blonde stout. This ale has roasted notes of coffee and chocolate that you'd expect to find in a jet black stout. We accomplished that feat by infusing this blonde with in-house made cold brew and cocoa nips seeped in coffee. The chocolate and coffee notes are supported by flaked oats for a rich, malty, silty smoothness rather. If you've never had a blonde stout, I definitely recommend you find one and try them because they are usually delicious. That is our choice number 3. And our choice number 4 is from a brewery that I've never had before, but it has a cool can. And you guys know how I'm a sucker for a good beer can, except for IPAs. IPAs always have the best beer cans. They have the best design, and I can't buy them because they're IPAs, and I refuse. This is from Aeronaut Brewery. Aeronaut Breweries in Massachusetts, but we're going to try not to hold that against them. And this is a milk stout with cocoa nips, and it says, "Behold, Cocoa Sutra." The beer is called Cocoa Sutra. Featuring cocoa nips sourced and roasted by our friends and neighbors, Somerville Chocolates. Somerville is one of the most woke cities in all of Massachusetts. This collaborative milk stout boasts alluring chocolate aromas with creamy and smooth body. This deliciously dark beer finishes with a powerfully pleasing cocoa note. So those are our choices, guys. Again, I'm going to put the poll in the chat on YouTube. We have the mystery creature beer that almost exploded right on stream. And that's going to be your Berliner Weiss with pink guava. We have the Imperial pink lemonade stout with lemons, raspberries, and strawberries. We have the blonde stout with coffee. Or we have Cocoa Sutra, the cocoa milk stout. Let me know your vote in the chat. And while you guys are doing that, I'm going to set up this presentation. Set up the presentation. Maybe I do need that 11% beer. I don't know. I really want the blonde one, though. I want the blonde one more. Okay. BDSM draws its moral, political, and even erotic energies from consent talk. Yet erotic cannibalism, you always know it's going to be a good day when literally in the first paragraph of the presentation description, it says erotic cannibalism. Okay. Yet erotic cannibalism and other lethal sex practice challenge consent as a guarantor of permissible, let alone good sex. If consent does not vindicate any and all rough sex, what about other rough play like football? Fischel argues that analogizing kinky sex to football to legitimate the former ultimately indicts the latter. Okay, so if we can't have kinky sex, we can't play football. Is that really the argument that's being... Okay. Oh my word. Drawing on material from his forthcoming manuscript, Screw Consent, and from his current research on the conceptual promiscuity of dignity, Fischel proposes that neither consent nor dignity delivers the sexual politics they promise. Joseph Fischel is an associate professor and director of graduate studies of women's gender and sexuality studies at, wait for it, Yale University. Yale University. Fischel is a theorist of social and sexual justice. His research on the regulation of sex, gender, and sexuality is formed by normative political theory, queer studies, and critical race and feminist legal theory. His first 2 books interrogate consent as the magnetizing, dominant metric of modern sex law and late modern sexual ethics. Sex and Harm in the Age of Consent argues that the sociological figures of the recidivistic sex offender, an innocent child, and heroic homosexual invest consent with its normative power while obfuscating more pervasive but less perceptible forms of sexual injury. Okay, I don't even know what any of that means. Fischel received his PhD from the Political Science Department of the University of Chicago. Excellent. So, Who's ready to talk about BDSM and football? Anyone, please mount the like button for me if you are ready to learn about BDSM and football. And should we just keep a running count of how many times I have to say BDSM in this presentation today? I have a legitimate PhD, I swear, and this is what I do on the internet now. I talk about BDSM and football. Never even went to a school that had a football team. Don't understand football. Never was interested in football. But here we are. Prometheus whipped the like button. If you would like to, you don't have to mount the like button. You can spank the like button. You can paddle the like button. You can tie the like button up. You can use nipple clamps on the like button. You can, I don't know. What else can you do to the like button? What other BDM debauchery can you do with the you ball gagged the like button and pegged it? Yeah. Yep. How can I experience those beer flavors without drinking the beer itself? Well, I mean, they're making like a lot of like non-alcoholic cocktail stuff lately. I mean, I haven't like there is non-alcoholic beer, but like I don't think you're going to get this level of variety with non-alcoholic beer, but I have seen a lot of like really kind of like fancy non-alcoholic cocktail stuff lately, so maybe look into that. Sin made the like button wear a GIMP mask. Thank you, Sin, for that visual in my head. I do appreciate that. Benjamin said, I suppose you can sit on the like button's face. Yep. Okay. Yep. Everyday therapist used a riding crop. Very sassy. Violate the like button. Yep. You can put it on a sex swing. Yeah, you can. Okay. Yep. No, we do not. We only do consensual stuff. Stony baloney. No non-consent. That's not cool, bro. Not cool at all. Google it, bot. I dare you. Google it. You enjoy that. All right. Let's get this started. The sooner we get this started, the sooner it finishes. Oh, I didn't finish the poll. What is winning the poll? You guys are going to make me drink the pink guava? All right, fine. I'll drink the pink guava. Fine. That was unexpected, but all right. Let's get this party started. BDSM and football. You're all welcome.
Hi, everybody. Thanks. And if I'm not projecting enough, just let me know. This is why Lauren's such a fantastic advisor, because you go into her office and she says, here's a thing you're trying to say. You're like, yes, that's exactly the thing that I So she already did the better version of the talk that I'm going to give you. But thank you, Kristen Schultz and
this better not fucking explode. I'm gonna be mad.
Center for the Study of Gender and Sexuality. I received my PhD here in 2011 in political science under extraordinary intellectual mentorship of Lauren Berlant. Thank you always and forever for teaching me how to think and teaching me how to teach. Patchen Markell, Bernard Harcourt, and so many others, Nathan Targoff, Kathy Cohen, Julie Cooper, Jennifer Pitts, Linda Zerilli, Lisa Badine, Marianne Case, and Martha Nussbaum. And I realize it's a laundry list, but I mean, thinking of this talk, I just thought of how extraordinarily privileged I was to have such a brilliant group of scholars supporting and buoying me. And Nussbaum, whose work, as you'll see momentarily, infuses this talk throughout. Unlike many graduate students here, and I want to acknowledge this is not a facilitated place for everyone. My time here was pretty much fantastic. So I benefited from the stunningly smart council of advisors and friends. So thank you. And thank you all for being here. Thank you for having me back on this beautiful, warm spring afternoon. And thanks to all of you for coming out today. So this is my talk, Kink and Football, Consent and Dignity. So this is how I should give a warning. This is not a trigger warning, so you have to stay. You can't leave. I mean, you can leave if you want. But it's just a warning, right? Like you've come to a talk called Kink, whatever it's called, and there's going to be graphic descriptions of sex and sexual violence and violence.
Oh, good.
And I don't say that glibly. I just say that. Okay. So this is the German cannibal case that opens the chapter of the book that I'm speaking on. Also, my talk today. So in the early 2000s. this guy Armin Muse in Germany went online to find someone who he wanted to have sex with, consume, eat, and kill. Brands readily answered the call and said he would like to be consumed and killed, and so Brands came over to his house and they had sex, and then Muse tried to chew his penis off, but it didn't come off, so then he cut it off, and then they fried it, and they tried to eat it, but it was too... This is the descriptive graphic stuff that I was talking about. So then it was like charred, so they fed it to the dog. Okay. Oh, and then
I vaguely remember this, but I didn't know he tried to chew his dick off and then fried it and then fed it to the dog. What is wrong with people? Oh my God, talk about self-loathing. Why would you? Oh, I cannot even.
He put him in a bath. Brands like kind of bled out in the bath, and then he stabbed him, cut him up into a bunch of parts, stored him in all over the yard, and then regularly sort of dined on his parts with wine. And then, okay, so then it was exposed. There was a police tip-off, and the higher court said no, consent does not mitigate your culpability to. So why am I telling you this story? Especially since, as I argue in my first book, as do others, scandalous sex. Scandalous sex cases makes her panic thinking about sex.
Hang on. I'm sorry. Eating someone's dick off is not sex. Like, we should be able... This is not scandalous sex. This is not rough sex. This is something, but sex it is not.
Right? Hastily made laws that exacerbate rather than eradicate sexual violence. Except here, dramatization accentuates the point. A point. Consent is resolutely insufficient for imagining sexual justice and crafting sexual politics. So, yeah, resolutely insufficient. As I will adumbrate here and elaborate later, the German cannibal case presents a serious problem for BDSM and kink practitioners and advocates whose moral come political square one is consent. This is no longer, maybe please.
Why do there have to be BDSM advocates? Like why does BDSM need advocacy? What type of advocacy are they doing? It's like, you can do whatever you want, and I don't understand these people at all. You don't need permission to engage in whatever activity you want to in a bedroom or in a sex club if that's your thing, man, or anywhere else. Like, you don't need to go out and like be an activist about whatever your sex life is.
Okay, I'll just use my here. Okay, so right, this is a very small sample of the larger sort of consent fetish among the fetishists. So Carol Schuskat's a practitioner advocate of BDSM, and this is from this old anthology in the early 90s on leather and kink. Right, it has nothing to do with violence, consensual sadomasochism, about safely enacting sexual fantasies with the consenting partner. Emphasis first. Violence is the epitome of non-consensuality. This is the major lobbying group, the sort of kink lobbying group. I mean, it's not that major, so it's a kink lobbying group. But, and they've been appealing to the model penal code, which I'll talk about later, has been subject to a whole bunch of revisions and controversial revisions, and they're trying. The NCSF would like to make a kind of.
No, I don't agree with this. I don't think that BDSM queers normal sexual intercourse because people have always engaged in power plays and sex. And I don't mean any offense by this, Liquid Marble, but like, if you think that BDSM queers normal sex, you probably have a really boring sex life and you should be more adventurous. And I say that with the utmost respect because I like you. I'm not trying to shit on you or anything, but like it's like most people have either smacked someone's ass during sex or gotten their ass smacked. You know? Sex has always been at least partially about power and mutual exchanges and stuff like that, and dominating and submitting and stuff like that. It's how people work out a lot of their feelings. Well, Bot, you're asexual. You don't count. Okay?
And kink exemption to say, right, it's all about consent. The law should reflect that. But I think as the German cannibal case attests, we run into this problem with consent about its efficiency, which is one of three criticisms I level in the forthcoming book. subtly titled "Screw Consent." So there's the cover. It's a little shameless. So 3 criticisms I level at what I call the consent paradigm of sex law and sexual politics. So I'll outline the rest of the talk for you. Now, this comes out in December. I'm sure you can pre-order it before that. So you should do that. So the plan of action. So I'm going to talk about my first book for a moment, not only for self-aggrandizing purposes, but because it helps contextualize and clarify the arguments and stakes of screw consent and my talk now. I'll then chart the 3 criticisms leveled against consent across the 4, now 5 chapters.
Hang on, again, consent. Conservatives, I swear to God, BDSM is not, you guys are going to make me, conservatives, you guys are legitimately going to make me into a BDSM advocate. And I don't want to be a fucking activist regarding like sex, but BDSM is not the same as cannibalism and castration, conservatives. God damn, I swear to God. I swear to God. Conservatives who shit on everything that is not the missionary position under a blanket with the lights off as deviant and subversive to sex, you guys are the ones that make me want to be a socialist. You understand that, right? Like, I don't want to have shitty, boring, vanilla sex for the rest of my life. You guys are actually making me into a goddamn BDSM advocate, and we've only been watching this presentation for 5 minutes.
I'll come back to the German cannibal case in order to thoroughly trouble consent as an ethical guarantor for sex, kinky sex.
Super chat from Rottweiler. To hardcore conservatives, BDSM is still taboo because they can't even talk about regular sex without clutching their pearls. Ain't that the truth? Ain't that the truth? Maybe they really do need to get smacked on the ass with something hard or something shoved into their ass or anything. Maybe, well, I mean, I used to say like they need to remove the stick from their ass. Maybe they actually need the stick inserted in the ass to calm the F down. Conservatives make me want to be a socialist, and socialists make me want to be a conservative. Let's do that poll. Fuck it, let's do it. Poll. You don't have to answer with you. This is an anonymous poll, okay? How many have you tried? Hang on. Have you tried BDSM? And you don't have to say what you tried. There are many different variations of BDSM. I'm giving way more information than I really should be on the internet, but like whatever. Yes. No. I would consider spanking BDSM. Yes, I would. The definition of BDSM is bondage, discipline, sadomasochism. That is the definition of BDSM. Bondage, discipline, sadomasochism.
In American football. Okay. And I'll end with a dignity on a coda on dignity. Before the tidal wave of the semester capsized upon me, I thought this coda was going to be the meat of the talk, but that was foolishly ambitious. So today you'll get a flavor for that talk.
Really, Brooks?
That is not written. Oh no, that's my ugly book. Wait, hold on a second. Okay. It's a very preliminary, the coda. It's a very preliminary investigation into the political and moral pluripotence of dignity. This is sort of what I'm giving to you, sort of a report on a reconnaissance mission of the dignity literature for an article. And this is, so I'm moving from sort of project to an article that I'm writing with Claire McKinney, who's now a professor at William & Mary, and she also got a PhD in political science here, titled Capability Without Dignity, which will critically but generously engage Nussbaum's capabilities approach. I keep losing my mouse. Okay. All right. So the first book. So here's the other. And so just like I will acknowledge that this cover is terribly ugly, and I'm slightly embarrassed about it. I don't know why these lines are here, whatever. Okay, so that's so the second book. I was like, this first book was ugly, and the editor was like, yeah, that first book is totally ugly. All right, so so the question of that book is, what if our national sexuality is no longer heterosexuality but adult consensuality? That's a lot of syllables. What if our national sexuality is no longer heterosexuality but adult consensuality? If this is true, what kind of problem would that pose, and for whom? Surveying case law, statutes, feminist and liberal legal theory, television and film, I argue that consent churns out figures for its own normativity. The recidivistic sex offender, the innocent child, and the consenting adult prototype as the heroic homosexual. And so I'm flying through this. Sex and Harm, the book, makes the case that vulnerability, autonomy, and this shiny new word, well, not new word, but renovated word, preemption, ought to supplement innocence, consent, and predation as our organizing terms for remedying and also remediating.
All right, it looks like, according to the poll right now, and only like half of you have answered, 60% of you have engaged in BDSM. So when 60% of an audience is doing something, that thing is not non-normative, okay? This is my point, is every time conservatives are be like, BDSM, queer sex. No, bro. No, it doesn't. No, it doesn't. Because most people, the majority of people who are engaging in sexual behavior are also doing something related to BDSM. That means, yes, and exactly, Maria, and 40% of you are really overthinking it. I agree, Maria. So no, BDSM is normative. It is not non-normative. It is not queer.
Sexual violence. And I'll give another shout out to, especially to Lauren and to Patchen, because this book would not exist without them. It was the dissertation. Okay. So for my purposes today, the point here is that the consent criticisms are twofold, right? That it's moralized, turns out figures for its own normativity, and over-inclusive. And here I mean more or less categorical disqualifications based on age, right? So when you have an age of, in 12 states, there's a kind of blanket age of consent, which is 18 or 17, right? So you can have kind of that it can be over-inclusive, right? So denying young people the sexual autonomy. Also over-inclusive, you can think of that idiom in terms of people with disabilities, right? So there are states have clauses about, so often the language is mentally defective, right? People are kind of classed out of being able to consent to sexual relations, which denies, or can deny people with disabilities sex. So if if moralization and over-inclusiveness are the governing criticism of the book, the central criticism of the next book is that it consents under-inclusive. It doesn't do enough. And I think through idioms of insufficiency, inappositeness, $5 word, and scope. So three criticisms: insufficiency, inappositeness, and scope. So the first two chapters look at the insufficiency of consent. And I'll talk about the first one today. There's this kitschy little slide where I'll talk about the first one today. Okay. So insufficiency with regard to conduct, which is, does consent greenlight everything? And that's sort of what I'm talking about. That's the talk today. So that's insufficiency with regard to sexual conduct. The second one is insufficiency with regard to status. So there's certain kinds of vertical status relationships for which consent is insufficient, right? So just because the 14-year-old consents to sex with her high school coach, or the 16-year-old, or whatever, right? Is do we care? Or in what registers do we care? Legal or not. So this, and I was reading cases about this for my class tomorrow, the trouble with transgender rapists. So this looks at scope, definitional scope requirements. So there's a bunch of cases in Israel, the UK, and the US, written about by Alex Sharp and Eyal Gross, and where the issue, the pattern is trans men or butch women are convicted of some kind of sexual assault for deceiving their partners into having sex, right? That the consent is vitiated by their sex assignment at birth. So these cases are
I
pretty,
agree with that. I completely agree with that, by the way. I think that if you, and this might offend people, I don't really care. If you are trans and you sleep with someone without telling them you're trans, I don't think they can give consent to that. Like, that really rubs me the wrong way. It is completely dishonest. I just like, I have so many like it feels I'm just gonna say it feels rapey. It does. Like, I'm not a prude when it comes to sex by any means, but like, if you're gonna be having sex with someone and you can't be honest about who you are, then you shouldn't be having sex with them in the first place. I'm not saying you need to tell them everything about your life, but if you were born a boy and you now pass as a girl and you get you'll go out to a bar to find someone to fuck you because you're so desperate to have sex that you want to hide who you are, like, and you get someone to fuck you without telling them that you're like, you were born, like, it's gross and it's rapey and it feels very, 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 very bad. Not cool. That's not consenting.
Are transphobic, but they raise the question. There is an important question about what do you consent to when you consent to sex, and what is the scope, and who bears what burden of risk, right? So if I meet someone at a bar and say I went to Yale when I went to Wesleyan, right, to bed them, do we like that? We can all laugh at that, but like there are some kinds of forms of deception we might think maybe should be actionable, even if not criminal. Maybe they should be tortious.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with this too. I also think, like, if you have an STD, you need to disclose that and like wear a condom. Like, I mean, it's just like, I don't understand people who are so desperate for sex that they would lie and, like, I mean, intentionally deceive people in like really gross ways in order to get it. Just be who you are. You can always find people to sleep with you, but like, when you're lying, that just crosses the line.
Okay. This is so I'll move a little more. So Horses and Corpses about the inaptness of consent, and there I borrow heavily from Marion Case, who I think is not here, sadly. Right, the notion that when I look at these cases about sex with horses and sex with corpses, and the good liberal tends to think, oh, you can't have sex with horses because they didn't consent and the corpses didn't consent. But then you sort of think about it for 4 seconds, and you're like, consent doesn't usually apply to non-human animals. So asking if your dog consents to sit or to eat or whatever, and if you do think it applies, then
This guy thinks that it's okay to have sex with a horse because a horse can't consent. No. 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 This is why we can't have nice things. Don't have sex with animals. What the fuck is wrong with you?
then you need to not eat meat and factory farming and all of that. Corpses seem to meet, the sort of consent inquiry is the same one you would apply to like an apple pie, right? Like it's just not. It seems like the wrong metric. That was an American Pie reference, and it was also clip, and so I apologize. Okay, and then I kind of put them all together in this to think about this Connecticut disability sexual assault case, which I won't get into now, but it opens up to my preferred abstractions over consent, autonomy and access, which I will not be talking about as extensively today, unless there's time where you want to ask about it in the question and answer period. But I'll just say I think of sort of offer feminist reconstructions of autonomy and access, and I borrow access from the disability studies and activism world, and rethink autonomy to say how could autonomy and access help us think through some of these problems in ways that consent might not, to world building toward a democratically hedonic sexual culture. That's the overarching thought, democratically hedonic sexual culture. Today though, okay, so I'll focus on cannibals.
Yasin, I agree. I don't like his energy. I don't know what this guy's doing in bed, but like, I don't like his energy at all. Like, he's also a feminist, which and not like a TERF feminist who would be annoying enough, but like, this guy's doing some weird shit.
I also these slides. So I gave a version of this talk to a group of non-gender and sexuality studies.
As a reminder, he is a professor at Yale. Professor at Yale. And he just said he gave this talk to a bunch of non-gendered and sexuality. Let's listen to that again.
These slides. So I gave a version of this talk to a group of non-gender and sexuality studies scholars trying to be like, people have thought about SM before me, and there's a whole history of kinky and kinky sex practices before the term BDSM. So that's sort of all you need to know. But I'll say that when I think of sort of the first generation SM stuff was literature was from the 70s and 80s. That was largely a debate within.
Really? John says one of his professors got arrested for wow. Mm-hmm. Rottweiler, thank you for the super chat. This might be the first one ever we might get we might see trying to bridge the gap between kink stuff with children. Yeah, this might be. Uh-huh. Oh yeah. Gets paid for this, teaches college classes about this, writes books about this.
And lesbian and feminist circles around, what is the balance of BDSM and how far does consent get you? And is this reiterating patriarchy versus resisting patriarchy? And I'm sort of giving a reductive version in this Against SM anthology. Judy Butler has an entry who's she's attenuated the position, but her point is sort of the way that SM practitioners themselves as being sort of their desires are above politics, and it's all about resisting patriarchy. And her critique, which will not surprise most of you, is like what kind of inflation of the sovereign subject is necessary to assume your desires don't have politics or things like this.
Your desires have a politics?
And then of course there's lots of back and forth about these debates, and so Pat Cliffia, among many other people, talk about reworking trauma by eroticizing it, or expanding possibilities of pleasure, or taking all the crappy stuff of the social and processing it as erotic raw material. Okay, so that was the sort of earlier debate. There's this, what I think of as sort of second generation BDSM scholarship is mostly in the kind of ethnographic vein. And not that the first generation wasn't scholarly, but these books seem not to be, or intervention seems not to be beset by the consent question or by the patriarchy question. Margot Weiss is more interested in is kink neoliberal rather than is kink patriarchal. And also these I think are more interesting in sort of studying kink as a subculture, as a set of subcultural practices rather than thumbs up or thumbs down. I'll just quote Margot Weiss here because it's helpful on terminology.
Psychoanalytic interpretations, as we know, socialists are obsessed with Freud and psychoanalytics.
BDSM is BDSM is a relatively recent, and many suggest, internet coinage. It is an amalgamation of three acronyms: B and D, bondage discipline, S, domination submission, and SM, sadomasochism. Which I realize doesn't really say much without further elaborations, but there it is. And SM, S/M, BDSM are all moves that depathologize, sadomasochism, the Kraft-Ebing term from 1886. Okay. My project is actually returned to these first questions. It just tries to take a different shape on the first set of questions about consent and about consent's transformative force, whether ethically or legally. And yeah, again, this is a really embarrassing slide, but the point is
the Marquis de Sade.
Okay. And also that history or praxis of sex, that they're before the term.
Has anyone ever read the Marquis de Sade? I'm not talking about seeing the Quills movie, although I kind of want to watch Quills. I've been thinking about Quills lately. Maybe I'll make Victor watch that later. That'll be fun for him. But has anyone ever read the Marquis? We were talking about the Marquis de Sade in one of my Zoom calls recently. Don't watch that Sallow movie, by the way. Don't Google that bot. Trust me. The most disturbing movie I have ever seen. I couldn't even finish this movie. It was so bad. It's an Italian, and the reason I'm thinking about it is it's based off the Marquis de Sade, because the Marquis de Sade wrote some sick shit, man. But there's this movie Sallow, Salo, Sallow. It's an awful Italian movie that is the most fucked up movie you will ever see in your life. And it's based on the Marquis de Sade. Like, I tried. And I like gross movies. I like torture porn movies. I like movies with a lot of blood. I like horror movies. I've been watching horror movies since I was like 8 years old. Like, I love that stuff. I love movies that make you have that like visceral negative reaction to them, because I feel like having a visceral negative, like a strong negative reaction, is better than having no reaction. And I appreciate movies that can like provoke that. Hostel, yup, like Hostel. I love the Hostel movies. But like, man, Sallow, if you know what I'm talking about. Anyway. But I actually do like the Marquis de Sade. I mean, he wrote some fucked up shit, but at least it was interesting.
Before the term was coined, there's a whole history of literary representations of sex that are kinky, involve power, theatrics, bondage, toys, role play.
Oh God!
So,
oh no!
The point is
no! Don't make me watch The Human Centipede. No! Oh no! I'm thinking about The Human. Fuck you, Bill. Fuck you. Now I kind of want to watch The Human Centipede. I'm not gonna lie. I haven't seen that. But I know I would regret it. But I kind of want to watch The Human Centipede a little bit. This is like, my husband's listening to this right now. He was like, at first he was like, oh, you want to watch Quills? That means I'm going to get laid. And then it's like, oh, you want to watch The Human Centipede? That means I'm definitely not going to get laid. Yo, Reddit, I feel the same way. I was like, I got like halfway through it to, I'll just say this for the people who know, to like the dinner scene. And I'm not going to say what the dinner scene was. If you don't know what the dinner scene was, you don't want to know what the dinner scene was. But like, I was like, I have never made a bigger mistake in my life than watching this shit. Yeah, I couldn't finish it either, Rottweiler. It was so bad.
I'm not flung this thing. Okay. Also, I also should say, kink refers, to more than just like rough sex with a paddle, but that there's a kink culture and an SM literature and workshops and so on and so forth. In a way, a coordinate of this talk, I just realized this, a coordinate of this talk is when I went to the Women and Children First bookstore. Does that still exist?
Yeah.
And there was a BDSM thing, and they were practitioners and advocates. And it was like, oh, I totally forgot about this. And they were going on and on about safe words and consent, how great consent was. And I was like, yeah, but on paper, doesn't the victim of intimate partner violence who says she consented in a kink look the same on paper? And she totally went ballistic and would not listen. Right. And so, so I learned how to sort of change your style for your audience. But that's kind of an inspiration of this talk. Okay. So, so all of that to say there's a subculture, and it's more than rough sex with a paddle. Leads to my first question into the topic.
Cannibal Holocaust is a great movie. It's a classic. Everyone should watch Cannibal. I mean, it's effed up. Don't get me wrong. Cannibal Holocaust is a great movie. If you like Cannibal Holocaust, you should also watch The Green Inferno. The Green Inferno is relatively recent. It was an homage to Cannibal Holocaust. We might be watching 28 Days Later for a movie night, because we're going to do a Cillian Murphy movie in March. So maybe that'll be on the list.
First talk. To say, is this legit? Is this fair to sort of think about kink and about the ethics of kink and about sort of fetishizing the consent by using the German cannibal case as an example? As a grad student told me at Yale, like Pat Cliffy gave a talk somewhere, I think in the 80s, that said, if you're sending your partner to the hospital, it's not kink, right? Which is to say, there's a lot more in the kink repertoire besides consent. That's kind of my point, that like we could elevate those abstractions and concepts. Okay, so that's one question. So is it fair? The other question is, that my interrogations are not occurring in a vacuum, and if you read any of the literature on kink within kind of the gender sexuality studies ambit, the sort of running argument is, the legal decisions are mired in homophobia and erotophobia, right? So the case commonly cited is the famous or infamous Spanner case from the UK from the early 90s, which is a group of gay men.
Wait,
police found videotapes.
You think that it's not legal to eat someone's dick during sex because of homophobia? Is that literally the argument that he just made? That the only reason that you can't eat someone's dick during sex is homophobia? I don't think that's right.
And they were doing like kinky stuff and fish hooks through foreskins, and it was like all very like cringy when you're reading it. But the argument of sympathetic legal scholars is, the harms were kind of trumped up by the judges, and the decision, sort of drips with AIDS panic and homophobia, and Spanner becomes a case of erotophobia, homophobia being wrapped in judicial language, right? Or okay, so and I guess to both of those cautions, I think one, I think that the kink sympathetic scholars and activists kind of bring the question on by focusing so much, fixating so much on consent, right? I think the German cannibal case is a fair place to start because consent's the terrain that we're operating on. As for the Spanner case, Cheryl Hanna, a legal scholar, others point out that Spanner is not representative. Like it is a phobic case. But if you look at appellate decisions like that involve kinky sex across the U.S., what they are more often is rough sex defenses, right? Where he said she consented and that it was kinky, right? So okay, so I'll come back to that in a moment. But it's to say, that erotophobia maybe isn't fully explanatory over these cases. Okay. All right, so thinking about the green light problem. The green light, what I'm thinking of is the green light problem, right? What does consent green light? And so to think through, and if we don't want it to green light everything, what might be the side constraint, right? If we're not down with erotic cannibalism and consent doesn't do the work for us, then what would we want to do? Maybe you are down with erotic cannibalism, but I like my queer ethics to not be libertarian. Okay, so the big sports analogy.
He just said, like, he's not down with queer cannibalism because he likes his queer ethics to not be libertarian. Bro, that ain't libertarian. It ain't libertarian to eat someone, bro. What he's saying is that if someone consents to be eaten, then that's libertarian. And I mean, I bet, God damn it, I bet you there are actually libertarian arguments in favor of that, where someone's like, where some fucking libertarian was like, people own their body, and so if they consent to being eaten, that's okay because they own their body, and if they want to get eaten, then but it's just like, really?
And I can come back to that. I mean, if a version of a talk I get, someone said like, "But you never really said what was wrong with erotic cannibalism." But I'll try. Okay. So there's a big analogy in this literature to physical contact sports, and so why sports in the United States? So part of
yeah, I was thinking the same thing, Kyle. Like there's a libertarian argument against that too. I agree. Keep politics out of BDSM. Thank you, Tayton.
The reason the analogy is so popular to football and hockey, kink to football and hockey, is because the model penal code, and I'll come back to that in a moment, the model penal code permits consent as a defense to, quote, serious bodily injury if such injury is incurred in, quote, lawful athletic contest or competitive sport or other concerted activity not forbidden by law. So that's a whole bunch of jargon to say there is a sports exception to assault law. Right. So if Kristen and I go outside and I'm like, Kristen, just like knock the shit out of me outside. Like Kristen can get arrested for assault, and then I said, please knock the shit out of me. Should not be mitigating. We might be mitigating. Okay, but it's assaultive. But that's not true in football. Okay. So in the NPC, consent in the model penal code consent is not a defense to assault unless there are these exceptions. So states have adopted variants of this clause while refusing to permit consent as a defense to assault charges arising from alleged BDSM sex. I'll just pause very quickly here to say, in most state codes now, consent is a defense to sexual assault, right? In some states, it's not because there's still a force requirement. Okay, the point is, when kink scholars talk about like kink cases, it's actually assault cases, right? The defendant is tried with assault because consent is not a defense to assault. So, okay, so that's why there's this focus on the assault.
Yeah. When you play a sport, you consent to the rules of the game.
Assault statutes in the model penal code, and not sexual assault, at least here. Okay, so right, the analogy is, if you're going to allow consent as a defense to football, why wouldn't you allow consent as a defense to kink? And so, as you might have gotten from the title, I think the analogy may work better in the other direction, right? Especially
because football has referees and is done in front of people, and kink is normally done in a bedroom with only 2 people. Although there could be plenty more people too. I mean, that's kind of there could be, but let's just let's just for the basis of like this assumption say it's like 2 people in a bedroom. There ain't no referee. There ain't no one enforcing the rules. There is an agreement that usually will be honored, that these are the lines and this is the safe word and X, Y, B, and Z. You don't have anyone enforcing the rules. There's no instant replay. There are penalties for breaking the rules in football. That's a really good point, Maldi. There are penalties for breaking the rules that an objective third party will like enforce. It's not exactly the same thing, and I'm definitely not saying this from experience. It's not exactly the same thing when someone has you handcuffed to something and is hitting you with a paddle. It's not the same thing. Yeah. I'm earning my super chats today.
relationship to football, right? So it seems to me the argument is not, if we're going to allow football, we should allow kink, but probably that we should not allow football. Okay. So now we're in the why football is bad part of the talk. But to speculate on reasons why, right? Why consent might be insufficient for football might help us think about the insufficiency of consent for sex. Okay. So I kind of came here by thinking of our football folk devils, and here are just some of them. So many of you are familiar with Colin Kaepernick, who takes a knee during the national anthem, protesting racialized disposability and Black Lives Matter. Ray Rice, right, knocked out his fiancée in the elevator, and the end was recorded. And Cam Newton, wasn't as infamous, but he had his moment of his inglorious moment where, like, he was at a press conference and a journalist asked him a question. Basically, it was like, haha, you're a woman asking me a question about sports. Right, and so then everyone got mad at him for being sexist. Okay, so, but I'll come back to that. So my point is, like, it seems to me like these sorts of figures, and Michael Vick and whoever else, this all has the making of a moral panic structure in a kind of technical Stanley Cohen way, where they become sites of condensation and displacement for broader social ills. They become bad guys, right? I think sort of ideological constructs for the moral catastrophe that is football. Yeah, that's my argument. Okay, so they become easy ways to say, like, here are the bad guys, rather than like this whole thing is morally catastrophic and needs to end, as currently corporatized and preached and practiced. So I will say a lot of this part of the talk and the chapter comes from this book Against Football and other sources too. A sports journalist who was a diehard football fan and then like sort of had this come to Jesus moment. I was like, wait, this is morally atrocious, and it is the spectacular takedown, forgive the pun, so to speak, from every dimension, not just chronic traumatic encephalopathy, which I'll come to in a moment, CTE, but about the way football exacerbates educational inequalities and urban poverty and racism and cultivates the worst gender norms and so on and so forth, which we see to this point. And this is the point where I'm like, yeah, the WGSS scholar is like, football's bad, so who would listen to me? But whatever. Okay, so I will not elaborate all of these in detail, but I do think football is a nostrum. It's marketed and sold and imagined as a golden ticket to poor racial minority communities. It's 1 in 500 high school boys make it to the pros. It's attritional for nearly all. Football sustains the racialized inequities it promises to overcome. The sort of city's poor argument is that taxpayers shell out 70% of the money for big stadiums while the rest of the city crumbles, and then the team owners get all the profits from the stadium. It cultivates the worst and narrowest patterns of gendered behavior, and he has these quotations with like star athletes saying, really what it's all about, they train you how to knock out the other players. Like, it's really all about the knockout. And also, strategizing to knock out the best player, because then you have a better chance of winning. Okay. And cultivates, I think, the narrowest and worst patterns of gendered behavior. And this calendar, but this is my second wave moment. So this is the Panthers, like, whatever year it was calendar, 2017 calendar, and this is the same year that Cam Newton on the Panthers was like, haha, you're a woman journalist, ask me a question about sports. And then they have this calendar, which is all their cheerleaders wearing no clothing on trees, like, not doing anything. And so it's like, where's that criticism? Okay. Well, here's your criticism. Right. And then so okay, I will also acknowledge there is more to football, and there are some benefits, and there's a technical beauty to the sport that I probably don't understand. And most of the time when I was in grad school, I watched it, the Super Bowl. Like, that was the one game I watched at Kit Kat on the north side with like dumbly colored martinis. And okay, so you might not, I might not be the most convincing, opponent of football. But I do think that I have come to think that it's undeniable that under any moral philosophy, the costs outweigh the benefits. And that's not just about
the cost of football,
chronic traumatic encephalopathy and brain damage. Although that's really,
no one has to watch football, no one has to play football, no one has to go to a football game. How is it possible that the costs of football outweigh the benefits? If you don't get value from watching football, then don't watch football. If you don't get value from going to a football game and sitting in the stands and buying an overpriced beer and a football jersey, then don't go. It's really not that hard. Like, I have literally never gone to a school that has a football team. Well, actually, that's not true. My master's degree school had a football team, but like, I never went to a football game. Like, I have never been to a football game. I don't even understand the rule of football. The only time I was even like remotely interested in football was when the Patriots were winning Super Bowls, and then like for like the day after the Super Bowl, you could wear the Patriots hat and piss everyone off, and I enjoyed that. I didn't really care about the football game. I just cared about like the aftermath of the football game and everyone being so pissed off that the Patriots won again. That was the only thing that was good about it. Football is really easy to avoid if you don't want to engage in it. It's not a compulsory activity.
Bad too. So the high school players are twice more likely to get concussed as college players because there are fewer regulations in high school, even though that seems to be kind of changing. And the other thing that you may know about CT is like, you don't need to be concussed. So all of these sort of cognitive ailments are from repeated brain injuries that don't have to show up as manifest as concussions. But my laundry listing here is to also say there are non-physical injuries to football too, and I'll come back to that in a moment. They're not just about the physical injury to the body. Okay. Oh, right. This is from a. Okay. So my point here is, with apologies to Lubar, is according, so Aubin cites a Purdue University medical researcher who says, quote, "You have the classic stereotype of the dumb jock," and I think the real issue is that's not how they start out, right? So the argument is that we are making high schoolers dumber by having repeated injuries to the head. Okay. What I'm getting at is that I think this unduly or unjustly impedes people's ability to do and be in the world. And here's language I'm borrowing from Nussbaum from the capabilities approach, right? That there's a threshold of impediment around being and doing in the world, and football surpasses that threshold. Okay. So the actual reason that the consensual violence of football is permitted, whereas the consensual violence of some sex is prescribed, is that only one of these activities generates astronomical profit, mostly but not exclusively for white men, what Charles Mills dubs white opportunity hoarding.
White opportunity hoarding?
You can imagine that the difference between a knocked out football player and Janae Palmer, Ray Rice's then fiance, is the difference between consent and non-consent. refereed group activity, and unrefereed intimate relationships. But should we unequivocally permit, let alone promote, the counterfactual, in which Janae asked, as a part of a kink scene, to be knocked out? What if Janae were Jamal? What if, as part of this kink scene, Ray and Jamal wore jockstraps and tights and knocked each other out on artificial turf instead of in a sling? Under critical race rather than queer theoretic legs, the sport exception to assault statutes in U.S. jurisprudence is less about sex negativity than racialized disposability, which bodies matter. And I'll just say this is not a story about causes, right? So the sports exception, the NBC was probably drafted when, when the NFL or whatever version, Anthony, I don't know this, but when the NFL was still racist. So this is not a story about what led to the exemption, but it's to say what are the effects now. All right, so then, if we want to say, okay, maybe if you're with me, and we're like, consent might not be the green light to all kinds of social or sexual practices like football or erotic cannibalism. What else might there be in our sort of ethical/legal repertoire? One of the side constraints that's posed often in literature on this is seriousness, right? That if the injury is serious, then consent should not be legit defense. And the argument is basically to apply the same exception to kink that football gets, but to do so in a non-homophobic, non-erotophobic way, right? So like actual seriousness as opposed to, so the thing about like the fish hook through the scrotum or whatever is like, it sounds horrible and cringeworthy, but also it is not permanent, it goes away and like whatever, right? Okay. Not like whatever, but you see. I think this is misguided. I think because I think the seriousness in the literature in the Model Penal Code ends up being located on the body, as in serious physical injury to the body, or grievous and permanent is the MPC language, but grievous and permanent injury to the body. And I think the focus on the body and the injury it sustains is misleading. So remember that part where Lauren was like, I don't make up shiny new words to get at a problem? So here's a shiny new word that's ugly to get at a problem, which I'm thinking of as the purported normativity of seriousness, with kind of the hyper-focus on the body. So this is, maybe a contradiction in terms, and we all like hate sentences that start with the history of Western philosophy. But in the history of Western philosophy, right, a common theme is the downplaying or degrading of the body, right? Elevation of the mind, a dualism that separates and subordinates mind over body. So it's sort of like, what am I talking about? Normativity of seriousness. Iris Young refers to that kind of down degradation or downgrading of the body as somatophobia, which I like.
Somatophobia.
And so I'll just say I think this is not a contradiction. I think it's the flip side of the same question, right? Like I think the sort of hyper infatuation with the body and its emissions and its processes is sort of all part of the same dualism or the same problem. Okay, and so I think the hyper focus runs both problems that are both over inclusive and under inclusive. Over inclusive is a sort of serious and permanent injury, leads one to question tattoos and piercings and scarification, also gender affirming surgery.
Fuck you.
Permanent and grievous injury.
Fuck you. He's saying that I can't consent to getting a tattoo? Bullshit.
And so that seems misguided to have this focus on just on permanent bodily injury or harm. Okay. And under inclusive is because I think it misses some of the kinds of harms that we might care about. So in State v. Van, I'll just briefly go through this case. Roger Van met JCG, who they call him online. Does anyone know this case? No. Okay. So they met online, and JCG was like, I'm in a master sub relationship, but it's not master subby enough, and I want to be super subby, and I'm gonna fake my own death and escape. And he was living in Houston. He goes to Nebraska, and I don't want to have safe words, and I want you to put me into a cage. And I'm going to tell you I want to get out of the cage, but I'm telling you in this email, but I don't want to get out of the cage, so don't listen to me, and do all these horrible things to me, and I want to be your slave forever and eventually die in your hands. And so Roger Van was like, okay, cool. So that all happens, and then JCG, he's kept in a cage, in like a 4-foot by 6-foot windowless cage in a basement for a week. And Van and his other amanuensis sub person do all sorts of horrible things to JCG and brand him and whatever. Okay, so after a week, JCG is like, I don't want to be here anymore. And Van, like a good sex positive college student, looks at the email.
That's why you have a safe word, motherfucker. That is the entire point of a safe word. So that if the person changes their mind, they can say the safe word and you stop and you don't refer back to the email from last goddamn week. This is like BDSM 101, bro. This is Kink 101.
And sees like affirmative consent, like he wants me to continue caging him. So he double checked the consent and continued to abuse him. And then the amanuensis guy is like, I think he's telling the truth. And so he helped JCG escape. JCG escapes, goes back to his like lover and father. They're not the same person. His lover and his father. That was a whole different question. And then they convince him to prosecute, to go to the cops. And so Van is convicted of assault, sexual assault, false imprisonment, terroristic threats, a whole bunch of statutes. And so one of the questions Van raised was, well, based on this statute alone, you should be criminalizing tattoo artists and scarification artists, whatever. And the court just said, that's not before us, whatever. Okay, but my interest in this case is some folks have written about this and they've written all.
Listen. I've gotten enough tattoos to know that if I am in the tattoo appointment and I say, stop tattooing me, even though I've signed the consent paperwork saying I want this tattoo, if I say, stop tattooing me, either like I need a break for a second or like I'm done, I can't go anymore, you know what the tattoo artist is going to do? The tattoo artist is going to stop. Or sometimes the tattoo artist has a little spray that they can spray on the tattoo to make it more bearable to complete the tattoo, which is nice. But like, yes, you consent to getting the tattoo, but you can also say at any point during the tattoo, I need a break, stop, like, I don't want to do this anymore. Like, you're still going to have the tattoo, but like, you don't have to keep going. And the tattoo artist isn't going to like say, well, you signed this consent work and da-da-da-da-da-da. It's like, and then you have to get the rest of this tattoo. No, the tattoo artist is going to say, well, you already paid me, so whatever.
About the grievous injury, and it's all been about the body, and like no one's talked about keeping him in a cage for a week with no windows. And what does that mean? And can we think about that as a kind of injury around being and doing in the world that doesn't focus so much on the body? And to kind of preempt the criticism that my version of the body is an indefensible modern one that doesn't think about, say, the bodily effects of solitary confinement. That's true, but the law's version of the body is modern, so that's my excuse. Okay. Right. So I think that's under-inclusive to focus on the body, to sort of miss this imprisonment as its own kind of sexual injury. Of course, once we canvass the problem of caging and imprisonment and grievous impediments to being and doing, this opens out to a much bigger question that I'm not going to take on here. But what kind of punishment for what kind of crime? And more for this talk, and thinking in this way help us think too about the wrongs of football beyond the physical, right? Beyond CTE. So the other, I just want to, I feel like I've been talking for 2 hours now. How long have I been talking for? Like 30 minutes, 35 minutes?
36 minutes.
Okay, okay. Thanks all for bearing with me. So the other, I have like 8 more minutes. Okay, so the other stock exchange dignity. And I'll be quick. Basically, this law professor Vera Bergelsen says it should be, it should be that if the injury is violates human dignity, then maybe consent is insufficient, right? This is convoluted, but basically she's like, since dignity can be sort of has wide interpretive latitude, I'm going to say dignity plus long-term interests. So if activity violates your long-term interests and your dignity, then it's not kosher. And my argument simply is, once she's added the long-term welfare interest business, she no longer needs the dignity, so I'm not sure why it's there. And the counterfactual is, with the German cannibal case, right? Even if they had like vanilla sex with like lots of lube, and everyone was happy, and there was no pain, and there was no penis removal, and you just like shot him dead, right? Like instantly killed him, we would still probably think that's not okay. And then if you want to say it, well, ending a life like that just is not dignified, then you're just kind of equating dignity with long-term interests, right? So I'm not sure what dignity is doing there. So this is the dignity coda. Dubious sense of dignity. Okay. I'll try to be on the quicker side. But so, and this is the next article. It's my investigation into researching the side constraints beyond or in tandem with consent that brought me to dignity, and the dilemma over dignity. I gesture toward here, prodding me to think more deeply about dignity as the core normative foundation of Nussbaum's capabilities.
Perhaps you should sit and watch before asking dumb questions.
Approach. In part because the capabilities approach directly and indirectly guides all sorts of other normative presuppositions and aspirations of screwed consent. So the article that we're working on, Capability Without Dignity, that will be a title, or depending on where we end up, it'll be called Capability Without Dignity ? So we'll see where we go. And the ruminations here are preliminary and sketchy and offered in a most intellectually generous spirit, in part because I thought Martha might be here, which is not. It's okay. But I do owe a lot to her, and this talk does. So I won't do justice to the capabilities approach, so to speak, even the intricacies of its relationship to dignity and its phenomenal influence over all sorts of theories and projects of justice. But I'll say, as many of you know, Nussbaum proffers her capabilities approach, a renovation of Amartya Sen's work on capabilities in global economics, as a powerful counter-proposal to Rawls's model of justice. Justice is fairness. Nussbaum substitutes Rawls's political conception of the human as rational and autonomous with a political conception of the human as variably needy and dependent, asking correspondingly, what does justice require for needy and dependent subjects to lead lives worthy of dignity? Far beyond a just distribution of goods in the Rawlsian register, far beyond a just distribution of goods, material provisions, and rights, dignity demands a basic governing structure, the state, that enables subjects to reach a minimum threshold of these 10 central capabilities. Among them, life, bodily health, bodily integrity, practical reason, but also affiliation and play. So this move both enlarges the requirements of justice, what states must do, and expands the recipients or subjects of justice, who is entitled, who gets to be entitled to this minimum threshold of capabilities. So we'll call it the CA. She calls it the CA, capabilities approach. The CA, premise as it is upon realizing lives worthy of dignity, has a sharply different, more promising, and frankly more psychologically sound answer to the question, why do we act in concert to create just institutions? Then does Rawls's Justice is Fairness, premise as it is upon human moral powers of rationality and reason. So for Rawls, we contract together because we expect mutual advantage from the ensuing collective. For Nussbaum, following Aristotle and Marx, we act in concert for a just society because we are social creatures whose dignity materializes in sociality. Indeed, we are dignified in our needing and depending upon others. And here I will just gesture and not talk about the ways in which that version of dignity is itself very different from, Ciceronian dignity or Kantian dignity or Catholic dignity. Connecting rationality and reason with dignity, a dignity for which practical reason is componential but not comprehensive of dignity, contra Kant. Justice notably and imperatively extends to non-human animals and persons with significant intellectual disabilities. Nussbaum herself elaborates and expands the capabilities approach in these and other directions, and the theoretical contributions have been widely, beautifully picked up by others, with due regard for the role of dignity. So these are just two recent examples. Don Kulik, who is to be at the University of Chicago, and Jen Richard wrote this beautiful book, Loneliness and Its Opposite, that thinks through the capabilities approach and about dignity to argue that we should be respecting and much more importantly, resourcing and assisting the erotic lives of people with significant disabilities. Shot in the Kraft's book, she at the end of it sort of argues that the dignity and the capabilities approach from Nussbaum offers a more expansive and capacious way to think about justice for the injuries suffered disproportionately by Black women, and that the CA is sort of a necessary corrective to the racial justice theories of Tommy Shelby and Charles Mills, right? So that's just sort of giving shout outs to these books because I like these books. Okay. So those are a fraction of the benefits of theorizing justice with dignity, but what might be some of the costs? So I've already enumerated what I take to be the cost of dignity. It's conceptual promiscuity, and I kind of jumped over that. But Bergelson says, well, fishhook thing, that'll be okay because long-term interest. But this other guy, Dennis Baker's like, no. Like all of that stuff should be criminal because it's undignified, right? He also thinks sex between serodiscordant partners should be criminal because it's undignified, right? So this is the problem. This is the kind of problem I'm getting at with dignity, sort of the deeply nasty sex negative place it goes. Put most bluntly, I am not sure what dignity means. And its pluripotent seems to make it serviceable for all kinds of projects: emancipatory, feminist, socially transformative, conservative, sex negative, anti-feminist. Nussbaum and Dixon allude, in an article on abortion and the capabilities approach, Nussbaum and Roswell and Dixon allude to dignity's interpretive latitude, writing, dignity is an intuitive notion that is by no means utterly clear. I'll come back to the article in a moment. Law professor at Yale, Samuel Moyn, observes the very different ways dignity circulated in the 2012 Republican and Democratic Party platforms. So in the former, the Republican Party platform, dignity is invoked against abortion and same-sex marriage. In the latter, it's invoked on behalf of women's rights and health care. So the argument I'm making is similar to Bernard Harcourt's about harm in 1999. Okay, the dignity argument has been famously stretched in all the directions over abortion, right? So, and this is a bunch of scholars pointed to this. In Gonzalez v. Carhart, upheld the 2003 Partial Birth Abortion Act in part to respect fetal dignity. And the decision also infamously gestures that the ban might respect the dignity of the woman who would later come to regret her abortion were the partial birth abortion permitted. So this strikes most of us as anti-feminist and patronizing, but Reed Siegel points out that dignity argument has a longer political history among religious right organizations, right? That the dignity of the woman who may regret her decision. And of course, kinky sex. Bergelson would not criminalize sex with fishhooks. This guy, Dennis Baker, would. Okay. So Nussbaum herself, in Frontiers of Justice, intimates that this indeterminacy of dignity, when she in her conversations with Adam Smith and Karl Marx, Smith recalls Nussbaum observed, quote, that what is compatible with human dignity may itself vary from society to society. And she notes, for example, shirtlessness in public may or may not be dignified in one locale, attesting to dignity, social, and historical contingency. Nussbaum cites Marx to buttress the point that some modes of eating, moving, and interacting are, quote, compatible with human dignity. Other modes are presumptively undignified. But this begs the question, right? This begs the question, which mode is which, and according to which principles? They write, human dignity requires not just giving some food, but giving choices regarding nutrition, not just health, but choice regarding health. And so I wonder what would happen if we switch this, or imagine the replacement. Human dignity requires not just giving some opportunities for sexual satisfaction, but giving choices regarding sexual satisfaction. I'm using the language from her capabilities approach, right? So in one of the capabilities, bodily integrity, it says people should have the opportunities for sexual satisfaction. And the capabilities are supposed to be non-fungible, non-hierarchical. So sexual satisfaction is supposed to matter as much as every other capability. Okay. This, to me, I think, sharpens the dignity dilemma. For if some sex practices seem undignified, surely denying people a subset of sexual practices also seems like a denial of dignity, adaptive preferences notwithstanding. My hunch is that neither Nussbaum nor her CA would have little interest in the regulation of, like, piss play, but be very much concerned with the regulation, even outright prescription, of erotic cannibalism. And if that's the case, it may not be the distinction between piss play and erotic the distinction between piss play and erotic cannibalism.
I can't wait for the Q&A. I'm like living for the Q&A.
Has less to do with dignity than with striving, agency, decisional autonomy, and these sorts of normative principles that.
You don't think that women engage in BDSM, bro? Conservatives. So sheltered. So sheltered. I promise you women engage in this stuff too. Just go to kink.com. They're free previews. You can watch the movies. You can see. Women engage in this stuff too.
That often orbit very closely to Nussbaum's dignity discussion. And so the article we have not yet written, but thank you for giving me the opportunity to flesh it out, flips the logic of this chapter, Kink and Cannibals. Rather than ask how might the capabilities approach and its central role for dignity govern social practices like kink and football, it asks how social practices like kink and football may
You're not the boss of me, two ladies.
In Nussbaum's renovated capabilities approach. Another way to say this within the CA lexicon itself is that the bodily health capability, and with it its language of adequate shelter, nourishment, and good health may conflict with the bodily integrity capability and its opportunities for sexual satisfaction, right? So we could argue that JCG didn't have adequate shelter, but that was an opportunity for sexual satisfaction. Two final points to this coda. So basically in the abortion article, or I think it's called, I had it up there, but abortion the capabilities approach, Dixon and Nussbaum want to end up saying that, the dignity of the adult pregnant woman generally matters more than the dignity of the fetus, even as they accord dignity to the fetus. It sort of feels like ad hoc, but they want to make that argument, and they do this by according, quote, striving and agency as componential of the adult woman's dignity, but not the fetus, right? She has potential for striving and agency, the fetus doesn't, so we should defer to decisions to respect the woman and her decision to abort the fetus and to respect the dignity of the fetus. Right, and that fits in with a sort of larger argument in that article about wanting to complement health-based arguments to women's dignity and choosing an abortion to individual liberty or decisional autonomy-based arguments supporting women's dignity, i.e. they're looking at like the policy legal world around abortion and noticing that reproductive justice groups are saying, this is a woman's dignity issue because of her health. And Nussbaum and Dixon will say yes, and also it's a dignity issue because of women's, freedom and autonomy, right? And what I'm noticing is there's a lot of autonomy language and freedom language and striving and agency language when the thing she thinks she's talking about is dignity. So this is all a medium long or long way of saying perhaps it's striving, agency, and autonomy, not dignity itself, that might stealthily ground the capabilities approach. But, point two, in another article on children and the capabilities approach, Nussbaum and Dixon propose that striving and agency are themselves dangerously normatively unanchored. In a footnote, and here you see the U Chicago in me, like in footnote 79, that's actually a Bernard Harcourt thing. Okay, anyway.
And I'm saying that this is retarded because none of what he said doesn't apply to women too. Like, this is conservative. I swear to fucking God, conservatives, you guys find a way to screw up absolutely everything. Nothing in this presentation would be any different if a woman was the gender of the people involved doesn't actually matter. And maybe if you guys got a little bit more adventurous and you went beyond the missionary position under a blanket with the fucking lights off, you would know that. You guys screw up because you always focus on exactly the wrong fucking things. Every time. Predictably. I don't even know why we're having this conversation right now. This is a stupid derailment.
In footnote 79 of this article, that I'm not citing properly, Nussbaum reports a debate with Amartya Sen that facilitating capabilities for capability's sake, for developing any and all human capabilities, could risk encouraging the capability, say for violence, or the capability for racial discrimination. Right? So even as dignity authorizes robust, expansive state provisions and entitlements, the facilitation of opportunities that the Rawlsian basic structure does not, dignity also, I think, holds caboting force, delimiting the kinds of capabilities to be cultivated, right? Like encouraging the capability to discriminate is not dignified. So the questions moving forward on this project are, if not dignity, what? If dignity can the concept be further clarified, along with its correlating costs? And if we want to opt instead for something like striving, agency, or autonomy, can these be morally qualified without recourse to dignity? That's sort of where I'm going to end. I'm not going to talk about autonomy and access, but just say these are the abstractions that I put forward in the chapter in the book, offering. I try to say, disability studies folks are worried about autonomy and what it implies, and gender and sexuality folks are worried about access and what it implies. But if you kind of cross-pollinate and take access from the disability studies world, take autonomy, kind of relational autonomy from the feminist theoretic world, you can do so productively to address some of the questions and kink and animals and other problems.
So effectively, his argument is that if kink is not legal, then football and tattoos should also not be legal. Because if people can't consent to rough sex, then people also can't consent to playing football and getting tattoos. Did I sum that up correctly? Is that about it? We're going into. I actually think the Q&A is going to be more interesting than the presentation, but did I miss any of his arguments? If all and he also said that animals couldn't consent to like animals didn't need to consent to sex, which was weird, and I don't co-sign that at all. Like, he basically made the argument that you're allowed to fuck a horse because... Well, he didn't basically. He made the argument that you're allowed to fuck a horse because horses can't say no because they're not humans. And he made the argument that people couldn't withdraw consent in the middle of it if they've already given consent, which is dumb and stupid and not real. That's the entire point of a safe word in the first place. All right, let's see the Q&A.
Oh, I'll leave it there. Thank you. Yeah.
I'm just about the temporality of the capability approach, especially in relation to one term in the Aristotelian version, but also in the Islam's version, which is flourishing.
Mm-hmm.
So I thought that when you were going to go back to the example about confinement, that the risk of PTSD and the
Hang on, I got a super chat from Tayton. I feel like he was arguing consent and dignity within BDSM is like a Supreme Court. Tayton, I don't know what that means. I feel like he was arguing consent and dignity within BDSM is like a Supreme Court. I don't know. I have no idea what that means, Tayton. I'm sorry. I wish I understood, but I don't understand what you mean by that. Please feel free to chat in a clarification.
preclusion of future sexual satisfaction might play a part there. So I'm wondering about like whether your justification bug.
He just spilled his water all over his computer.
Just give me a second. I think it's fine.
I wonder what that
Surface
sticker
level damage. Sorry for that crisis. Okay. Right. So I define the So I use Nussbaum here to talk about thinking about autonomy as thank you. To think about autonomy as a capability to co-determine sexual relationships. So I'm like kind of triangulating with Stephen Schulhofer and all these liberal legal theorists and feminist relational theorists on autonomy and say, what if we thought of autonomy as a capability to co-determine sexual relations rather than equate autonomy with consent, which is what happens in this literature. To say, and it's sort of counterintuitive to say, can it violate your sexual? Can you choose things that violate your sexual autonomy, right? And I kind of want to make the case that you can. That in fact, choosing to be in a basement cage for 2 weeks, that we care on sexual autonomy grounds about this is impeding your flourishing. Yeah, is that
answers the question? But it seems like you're not just doing away with dignity, but also with flourishing, because then the only thing that matters is sexual satisfaction or the fulfillment of sexual satisfaction in the event of sex that you're isolating. But then there's no consideration for what kind of like sexual satisfaction might happen in the future or any other kind of satisfaction or like coming into being as like a flourishing human being.
But I think that's right. That's the problem with caging someone, is that you don't have any possibility for, right? I mean, like one of the arguments, like Corey Brettschneider's argument about capital punishment, is that he wants punishments that people could reasonably agree on in a kind of it's a theoretical theory. It's a whatever. The point is, could citizens reasonably agree to be punished this way? And his argument is, no, we can't have capital punishment because you can't discuss this with someone who's dead. Like they have to be there.
That is so fucking retarded. Peyton says like he doesn't want any regulation, but he's also like I truly don't understand what is so hard to understand about a safe word. Like, you can withdraw consent if you are engaging in some BDSM activity. You set up a safe word beforehand, and that allows you to withdraw consent at any time. And any response, I'm sorry, like I know there are people who do this like, I don't want a safe word stuff, and I don't think it's a good idea. Like, you don't have to use the safe word, but like I'm sorry, like any responsible dom is going to insist on some sort of safe word. And then if you don't use it, you don't use it, but like the whole point of it is you can withdraw consent at any time. This is not something that's like an unknown concept in this community.
That's kind of my thought about this with sexual autonomy too, is like if you do things that so impede your ability, for flourishing and for I guess I'm focusing on sexual flourishing, right? Then I think that's a problem. And in an article that I didn't get to, they talk about these kink scholars and practitioners talk about deep consent in the scene. There's 3 kinds of consent. There's surface consent, scene consent, and deep consent. So the surface is like what we think of as consent. The scene is I don't know what we think of as consent. The scene consent is, there's a scene and there's a role play and we're all agreeing to this and here's a contract over. And then they have this deep consent, which is ridiculous. Like, it's a contradiction in terms. And basically what the deep consent is imagine yourself as the future sub-self of the sub that you are doing horrible things to. And if you can't imagine that person consenting later on, then you should not do this thing. But what it really means is don't be an asshole. As in, if the sub says, I really want you to cut my face off, the top is supposed to be like, I don't think you're gonna want me to cut your face off 10 minutes from now.
Yeah.
And the article that I talks about this is deep consent, and I just think let's just be honest. You're actually contravening the apparent preferences of the sub. So for me, I think what a kind of feminist reconstructive autonomy gets to is a capability to determine sexual intimate relationships is to say, I think this violates your sexual autonomy. I think that kind of injury is wrongly violative because it impedes your sexual autonomy. Yeah. I still feel like maybe we're talking past you, but okay. We're talking past you.
Thank you for your talk. I have a question about what you pointed to as chapter 3 of the book. And this might...
Hang on, we got a super chat from Azurwing. I think what he is alluding to is, can a person be charged criminally for something that happened prior to the safe word? He's just bad at it. Well, I mean, it seems in this case it was like some guy told some other guy that he wanted to be locked in the basement in a cage and he wanted to be tortured and punished and all this stuff, and he wrote an email saying, even if I say take me out of the cage, I don't want you to take me out of the cage. And so the guy that was the top was so they put him in a cage and they tortured him and they punished him and they did all the things. And then a week into this, the guy was like, I'm done now. I'm ready to be done. But the guy referred back to the previous email that said explicitly, even if I say take me out of the cage, don't take me out of the cage. I really mean it. Don't take me out. And it's this, it was irresponsible to engage in the first place. Set up a fucking safe word. Even if you don't think you're going to need the safe word, even if the whole thing could have been avoided had he just set up a goddamn safe word and insist no, I am not going to lock you in a cage in the basement and torture you relentlessly ad nauseum for however long without there being a safe word where you can withdraw consent. It's just irresponsible.
Might also sort of be connected to the first book also. I guess it's a question about deception and what people want from consent. So I was drawn to your description of chapter 3 because part of what animates my interest.
He wants full sex autonomy, but I mean, I don't have a problem with full sex autonomy, but it has to be among consenting adults. Consent is the only way that you make it work. So should there be a safe word in football? You don't have to play in the football game. If you don't want to play in the football game, you walk off the field and you don't play in the football game, and no one's going to make you play in the football game. Right? There are referees in a football game. There are coaches in a football game. There's a spectator audience in the football game. By participating in the football game, you have consented to play by the rules of the game. If you don't want to play by the rules of the game anymore, literally all you need to do is leave. No one is going to stop you. They might be pissed off at you, but no one's going to stop you. Well, in BDSM, you might be tied up to something. You might be like in the case of this guy, in a cage or something like that. You might be in a position where you can't just leave. Right? And if you're going to put yourself in a position where you can't leave and you didn't set up a safe word, I mean, that's just stupid. And I think at that point, like if you haven't set up a safe word, it's like the responsibility goes to the dom to say, no, I'm not, like, I don't think this is like, you're telling me, even though you told me a week ago in an email that you don't want me to take you out of the cage, I think this has gone a little far now and I'm ready to stop. You know? It is stupid of the dom to participate without a safe word.
Consent is HIV criminalization cases, and deception plays like a big role in those cases. And what's often interesting to me is that people who are quote unquote victims in those cases sometimes report knowing the status of the other person, consenting, and still sort of feeling duped by like the interaction, right? And so it seems that something like the provision of information is still not enough to undermine deception on one hand. But then on the other hand, it also sort of seems that the person or the people in these cases want more from consent than, I'm not sure. And so, and to complicate this further, I often find that, and you sort of demonstrated this when you're talking about talking to the women and children group about like something about consent, and then that sort of disrupting the space, and then people feeling like, you know, you were sort of frustrating the flow of things or their attachment to consent. So yeah, I guess the question is sort of like, what do people want from like consent as a framework? Like, what do they want to get from it? If even when sort of information is given, things seem safe, people still feel sort of duped by like a situation, or like, you know, report injury. Like, what do you think?
Right.
The attachment is to it.
Yeah. So I mean, I should say, so 2 pages into this book called True Consent.
Okay, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. Again, I'm sorry. This is conservatives being retarded. What do you classify as bodily harm? Do you classify getting a spanking as bodily harm? Do you classify getting paddled as bodily harm? Do you classify getting spanked to the point where you're bruised for a week as being bodily harmed? Do you classify getting handcuffed to something as being bodily harmed? Like, do you classify getting whips with like being whipped, or like having like a riding this is again, I'm sorry, but this is where conservatives like go way too far, and you guys create issues like this. Do you guys understand that when you are prudish about sex, you create this bullshit right here? Like, I think you should have a written psychological evaluation if you want to get paddled. Are you fucking shitting me? As we discussed earlier, that's not sex. That's cannibalism. No one's talking about that as actual like oh my fucking god. I swear to God. Yes. Can we please, like, we're gonna watch The Secretary during my movie month. The Secretary is gonna be first of all, The Secretary is a great fucking movie. It's a great movie. And after this presentation and seeing some of the chats that are coming in from people who are completely inexperienced with this sort of thing, again, maybe I'm giving away more information than I should, but conservatives, you need to watch The fucking Secretary, okay? Like, I don't know if I agree with that, but yeah, like, we're gonna watch The Secretary during my movie month. For sure.
And mainly like in law, that's not true consent, because it's the least bad metric we have between like force and non-consent and affirmative consent and desire, I think, which is a disaster. I think you know, consent's the least shitty. Sorry, the least crappy. You know,
I might watch The Secretary tonight. We're gonna have a movie marathon tonight.
Because like Robin West kind of moves in this direction, but it's like, you know, there's a lot of chosen undesired sex, like for babies or for whatever else, like, you know, or like sex is just mediocre, better than doing your homework or whatever. So I think desire is probably not where we want the criminal law to go. The HIV, it's so funny. So tomorrow I'm teaching.
Well, there actually was that one scene where she was wearing the what is it called? The saddle? So there I mean, not like an actual horse, but there was okay. I'm giving away too much.
The Jen Rubenfeld article on this deception, and also Kim Buchanan's article, which is a great article called "When Is HIV a Crime?" And basically argues that, like, through the language of consent and sort of public health language, we're targeting mostly men of color, straight men of color. Actually, is sort of and I don't. When she wrote the thing, I think there was not great data yet, but I think Trevor Hoppy's book also gets at this. Anyway, so. I think so. Jed Rubenfeld had this article in 2013 that was kind of like infamous for a little while, which is basically this question of, like, if we switch from a force standard to a consent standard, how far do we ride this train? Like, who bears what burden of risk? And he's like, there is no limit. So, if I makeup is deceptive, or what I say on Grindr is deceptive, or whatever, right? Like, all of that could then be criminal. And so he freaks out and says we have to go back to a force requirement. And then everyone freaked out about that. So, there have been a bunch of answers, like bunch of responses to that, and of course, HIV non-disclosure comes up a lot. A couple of questions come up, responses that come up. One is the law is now illogical, and there's all kinds of principles that govern rape law, and consent is just one of them. And there's also sexual subordination and a whole bunch of other, ideas. One is the more technical, like there's a difference between non-disclosure and deception, and there is a difference between non-disclosure and deception. And there's this thing, concept in the law called materiality, which is sort of like the what for, like, there's kind of like reasonable expectation. Like, would this have mattered, right? Is it, if you told me you had a goldfish, that shouldn't matter as much as, if you had a penis at birth or if you're HIV positive. I think materiality is dangerous because it's so normative, so I don't know if this is what you're looking for, but the kind of weird answer I come up with in the book, because I think Rubenfeld kind of has a point, is twofold. One is I'm actually okay with regulating or making against the law.
Why is it literally every time we watch a presentation that has anything to do with sex, I wind up on the side of the socialists because conservatives say the most ridiculous bullshit in my chat that I've ever seen in my life, the most ridiculous sexually repressed bullshit in my chat. And I'm just like, I can't. I can't. I would rather be on the side of the people who are, like, sexually fulfilled than the side of people who are sexually repressed because they have a giant stick up their ass about sex, probably because they were raised in a Christian church. I mean, I'm not saying you have to be crazy about sex to be sexually fulfilled. I'm not even saying you have to have I'm not like I mean, there are people that are perfectly satisfied without even, like, having sex, but when you're sexually repressed, you should not be making rules for other people about sex. I'm sorry. Get your own fucking house in order, bro. You don't make people want to be on your side. Conservatives need to get laid. For realsies.
The contravention of an explicit and conditional, but probably as a tort, not as a crime, so that you don't go to jail. So, for example, if it's like, I will only have sex with you if and only if, you went to the University of Chicago, right? And the person's like, I went to Chicago, and they, went to, I don't know, Notre Dame or something. Like, that's so ridiculous, but I'm kind of like, actually, if we do believe in sexual autonomy as, like, impending your choice structure, and this person makes it very clear what they want, and, like, you just totally lie about it, like, that seems, if we think sex is special, and Lauren says sex is special, then I think it's okay to think this is a wrong. The other part of that with the
you get to decide who you have sex with.
Transception is that I don't think "Are you a man?" is subject to a truth claim in the law. I don't think it should. So I think questions like, I'll have sex with you if and only if you went to this college.
This Yale professor just literally said that trans men can lie to people that they have sex with. Excuse me, trans women can lie to people they have sex with, and that's totally okay. Whoa. Hang on. Listen again.
Transception That seems, if we think sex is special, and Lauren says sex is special, then I think it's okay to think this is a wrong. The other part of that with the case, with all these cases about transception, is that I don't think "Are you a man?" is subject to a truth claim in the law. I don't think it should be. So I think questions like, I'll have sex with you if and only if you went to this college seems to me answerable as a truth claim. Are you a man? I think isn't. And it's sort of, that's like, this is like gender and sexuality studies 101. Like, what does it mean to lie?
All right, I'm clipping that. Fuck you, bro. Fuck you. Seriously? Let me just make sure my recording is set up correctly. It is. Okay.
They want, and like, you just totally lie about it. Like, that seems, if we think sex is special, and Lauren says sex is special, then I think it's okay to think this is a wrong.
Hang on, we're gonna go back a little bit.
It conditional, but probably as a tort, not as a. And so I don't know if this is really the kind of weird answer I come up with in the book, because I think Rubenfeld kind of has a point. Is twofold. One is I'm actually okay with regulating or making against the law the contravention of an explicit conditional, but probably as a tort, not as a crime, so that you don't go to jail. So, for example, if it's like, I will only have sex with you if and only if, you went to the University of Chicago, right? And the person's like, I went to Chicago, and they, went to, I don't know, Notre Dame or something. Like, that's so ridiculous, but I'm kind of like, actually, if we do believe in sexual autonomy as like impending your choice structure, and this person makes it very clear what they want, and like, you just totally lie about it. Like, that seems, if we think sex is special, and Lauren says sex is special, then I think it's okay to think this is a wrong. The other part of that with the case, with all these cases about transception, is that I don't think "Are you a man?" is subject to a truth claim in the law. I don't think it should be. So I think questions like, I'll have sex with you if and only if you went to this college seems to me answerable as a truth claim. Are you a man? I think isn't. And it's sort of, that's like, this is like gender and sexuality studies 101. Like, what does it mean to lie? I mean, so, okay. Yeah.
All right, I got my clip. Hang on, let me just make sure it's saved. Come on. Save my clip. There it is. Okay, we're good. Tayton said, to be honest, who and what the fuck are conservatives protecting? Because I think it's them protecting their own morals. Well, of course it is. It always is. Every single time. Perpetually. Forever.
So, in criminal law, it's consent. In civil law, it's welcomeness. And I'm just wondering if you could talk a little bit about the difference you see in that.
Yeah. Right. So, and welcomeness, like, is also the standard in sexual harassment law. Which, sexual harassment is not a crime. It's a civil violation, or civil rights infraction. In one way, it seems like affirmative consent reforms are trying to move towards, and I'll complicate the answer in a second, are trying to move towards a kind of welcomeness standard, right? That I think for a lot of activists, what's appealing about affirmative consent is that it's translating your desire, right? In fact, as McKinnon says, you can, there are a lot of forced yeses, right? Okay, so that's complicated. But the other thing about welcomeness is that it's really the issue is totality of the circumstances question that I don't know always translates to non-work environments, and then I would worry about kink, even though I don't worry too much about kink, which is, it seems to make sense to me in a civil case that the standard is more capacious and there's more totality of the circumstances. So like, is your boss saying all of these horrible sexist things to you? Welcome. And like, I'm sort of more comfortable with that inference than a welcomeness standard around, I would be nervous around juries applying that to like retroactively applying that to like, a sex party, Do you know what I mean? Where the stakes are higher, like imprisonment, you know, because like a lot of shady stuff happens in sex clubs that if brought to a jury would like not seem welcome, but I'd be nervous about you know, because it wasn't welcome, it's now a crime, right? I'm sort of thinking aloud. I'm not sure I endorse everything I just said, even though I'm recorded saying it. Yeah. Yeah. But it does seem to me like wantedness is more defensible in a civil, you know, realm than a criminal one. In part because the stakes are lower. Thanks, guys. Yeah.
Let me try and, like on the verge of having this in like a formulated basketball way. So there are a bunch of games that have come out in the last, like, video games that have come out in the last like 2 to 3 years, right? That are like games that are focused on consent. Sony Maricopas wrote this big article about what games could learn from.
Do you want to legislate your morals? What makes you qualified to tell me what I can and cannot engage in? What makes you qualified to tell me what morals I should and should not have? Why can't I enforce my morals on you? You see the slippery slope? If you want to have morals in your private life, but you don't get to legislate your morals and force your morals on other people.
You know, BDSM, and then a bunch of people that make queer games make games about consent.
Right.
And the interesting thing about all of these games, right, is that one is always sort of topping for that scene, right? So one is always sort of topping the scene. So like consent is always the limitation on the player's agency and how they can interact with the person or like the NPC that they are interacting with. And like in like BDSM educational contexts, it seems to be.
I would like to legislate that no one is allowed to raise their family as a Christian because I think that raising your family in the Christian church is indoctrinating your children, and all indoctrination is bad, right? And so we definitely shouldn't do that. So let's legislate against that. I would like to legislate that people should not be able to get married until they're in their 30s, because when you're in your 20s and definitely when you're in your teens, you're fucking stupid as shit. And so we should really ban all marriage, all legal marriage before the age of 30. And really, if we're getting really pragmatic about it, we should ban legal marriage before people buy a home. If you don't have your shit together enough to buy a home, you do not have your shit together enough to get married. You know what that would do? That would prevent astronomical spending on fucking weddings. When I firmly believe that if people like I bought my home before I got married. And do you know what I would rather do with like $10,000 rather than like spending it on like a fucking dress or something like that I'm gonna wear one day? I'd rather like redo my kitchen or a bathroom or something in my home, because when you buy a home before you get married, that puts your priorities all in order, where all of a sudden you're like, I don't really need to spend $40,000 on a wedding. I can spend it like sprucing up the home or buying a new car or doing like more practical things. So can we ban all marriage before the age of 30, or like before the age of 30 and before people buy a home? This is what we're talking about. When you assholes start trying to force your moral values on other people, then other people are going to try to force their moral values on you. You don't get to decide what other people do with their lives. This should not be hard. I don't know who the fuck you are. You're an anonymous person on the internet. Who exactly made you God over my life? This should not be something that needs to be thought about. This is something where if you don't want me to own you, then don't try to own me.
Like focused in that way as well. So like there's some, and I don't really know how to formulate this, but it seems like, you know, there's something interesting about, you know, when you're talking about consent as a limitation, who is that limitation on, and sort of like the constraints of that limitation, and what would happen if we started thinking, you know, if you designed a game along those lines where it's like, okay, you have to negotiate your consent, and then when you negotiated this thing, something happens to you. How good was your negotiating skills?
Right.
Which is like a much more terrifying game. Right. But there's something there about like genres of interaction and communication and like the direction of consent. And it seems like your approach manages to like sidestep like the way that this thing doesn't look the same from both sides.
Right. I just want video games that are about facilitating democratically hedonic sexual culture. Which is to say, like, there's so many more interesting questions to ask about intimacies and relationships and good sex and that like this is my like I think the big polemic thesis of this book is, don't screw consent in law, but screw it everywhere else, as in like our sexual justice politics and our imaginations. And I think part of why we're magnetized to consent is because the language of law is attractive and sounds declarative, and and we're drawn to bright lines sometimes. But that there's more exciting things to do and say about sex and about intimacy, and also about ethical sex. And so another where I end up on the book is to say, like, I think bad sex should be a bigger problem. I mean, and that we think of the like sex positive groups on campus as like where the weird queer feminist kids go, but actually like you could think about those sexual literacy forums and things like this as places that should be really central in our minimizing bad as in really bad, not just like but like really bad sex that doesn't reach the level of rape, and so why am I saying this all about video games? I mean, relationships in response to video games, because I think still from I don't know this, but from what you described it still seems to me to run on the presumption that consent is going to distinguish rape from rockstar sex, and I'm sort of more interested in the really bad sex that might not count as rape, for which consent doesn't help you all that much. Yeah.
I mean, I would say again, I know I said this earlier, but like this guy argued that trans people are allowed to lie about being trans, and that still doesn't fall within the bounds of like consent, and that's just not cool either, man. You can't give consent if you're sleeping with someone that's trans and you don't know they're trans.
No.
Yeah. Okay. Lauren, go for it. Okay, go for it.
So, like, you have that quote way at the beginning of your slides where you say that your thesis for the first book is that, like, if normative sex was heterosexual, now it's consensuality. What do you think it is about, like, this time where consensuality is so important? I mean, like, I study professional cuddlers, and consensual, like, dyadic consensual exchange is so important. And I'm just trying to think through myself, too, about, like, why is this the dominant model, not only for sex, but just for any kind of interaction between two separate people, where they want to take the consensual model to every realm of life. So, like, what do you think is going on?
Right. I mean, the bad answer is neoliberalism. That's not the right answer.
Like, but no,
So,
why do you think though? Like, I'm just trying to formulate it myself, like, why neoliberalism?
Right. So, I mean, that is one answer, right? And they're kind of individualizing impulse of neoliberalism. But the reason why that's also a bad answer is that it's not historically inaccurate. And so, the Wolfenden report is in 1957, right? The Model Penal Code is 1962. So, like you see in liberal legal language, consent has its moment prior to the early aughts or whatever. I just had a thought that left me. Oh, in the 70s, right? There was a big move to argue that the issue with child sexual abuse is not. It might not be that there's horrible sequelae, because maybe sometimes there aren't horrible sequelae, or that it's sick and pathological with the consent problem, right? So that was sort of the 1970s moment of consent. So I'm kind of evading your question, but I'm also saying there are different stories to tell about when consent, if you did the Google word search, like when it became popular and what zones. But it does seem, and I'm still evading your question, it does seem to me that the popularizing of consent now just indexes how terribly impoverished our vocabulary still is for thinking sexual justice. Yeah, but I think more about it. Yeah, Lauren.
Yeah. So the way I was thinking about her question before she asked it was the problem is stuff is fun. When will it be dead? And if you ask the question that way, that's a question of whether or not we have any belief at all in any structural protections against the future badness of the stuff that's fun. So football is fun. Adolescent sex where you're throwing your body at it might be fun, might not be fun, but you kind of want to do it whether or not you're having the experience of funness. But then the problem of the state and the problem of the law is, do we know enough about this when the stuff that's fun will be bad? That we can start litigating in advance of when it will be bad. And I think this is related to JT's question about the future, though I wouldn't go to flourishing as the metric here. And that's one of the reasons why neoliberalism isn't a bad answer, because neoliberalism is about the long.
Did she just say that neoliberalism is not the answer?
Wouldn't go to flourishing as the metric here. And that's one of the reasons why neoliberalism isn't a bad answer, because
isn't a bad answer.
The long withdrawal of belief in the law, the state, institutional norms, and normativity itself as a kind of constraint on the question of when will fun be dead. The history of people being poisoned by pleasure. And people knew it and didn't care. You knew that like 10,000 people a year were going to die in that car, but you didn't really care because stuff was fun, and you didn't really care when it would be dead. So, I don't know. I wish you would say more about that problem. Like, I think that's a bigger problem than the dignity problem, because there's no dignity in sex. That just seems like a red herring anyway. But the question of, you're busy becoming disorganized with other humans and yourself. What's dignity when the whole condition of it is the losing of the shape? So, and not in trouble. Anyway.
Yeah. For me, intellectually, what's appealing about dignity and like unpacking dignity is that, like, yes, but then also you have people being like, no, we're dignified in our need and our disorganization and our difference. So that's why I think it's right. I think you're right. It is a red herring, but also one, worth talking about.
I'm vegan, so herring.
And thinking about your question, I was thinking, about Wendy Brown makes this point well in Undoing the Demos about the evacuation of anything like a world to hold you up and to displace displace or redistribute the when the fun goes badly problem. And so then it becomes all about you and me and consent, and the translation. And I don't know if Joan Scott's actually written about this or just heard her talk about this, the kind of translation of structural problems into hurt feelings or divided feelings, I think they're part of the same. Well, go ahead. Oh, I think Lauren's written about this. Yeah. But you wrote about this like in 1993.
Well, that's what this means by what?
Well, I don't know. But it's kind of now.
Right. That's inside the point. But so I guess one of the ways that left academics stop thinking, which I don't believe you have, so I'm not saying that's not you secretly, is they say X is dangerous. Oh, it's dangerous to give the law that permission, or it's dangerous to give the state that permission, or it's dangerous to give parents who are terrible judges of anything that permission. Who would we give permission to? You start all your experiences, your skepticism of any normative judgment at all about who's going to tell you, who's going to help you not make the fun go bad in a way that will, and this is where I think your discourse on permanence really mattered, that will stay in everything. So I don't know, if you have stuff to say.
No, I don't know, but I think, and maybe I'm just getting tired, but I think that
Sorry.
No. I think the other thing that maybe drives this book and drove the first one is I'm not a fan of the anti-statist version of queer studies, where like everything is dangerous. And yes, we know all the ways in which not all, right? That the state's a complicated ally, but it seems like it's not going anywhere, even though everyone's it's always done. And so I say this to my students, and the question is not what's the right law, it's like what's the least wrong law, And so yes, it's always gonna be bad, but which cost can you bear? And it seems not the thing to jettison law outright, but to minimize it in its language in our visions of social justice projects, the sexual social justice projects.
We can end now.
I do.
Is that it?
Casey, your question quick-ish.
That is it. Holy shit.
Possibly.
Go for it.
I-
I don't know why.
Yeah, so my question was just kind of the role of risk assessment in this.
Oh, yeah.
And in terms of both a legal context, but also in talking about what do you include when you include, when you're talking about over-inclusivity, like in terms of like tattooing and piercing, right? Is that kind of like where there's this idea of the professional and of the ability to assess the risk that you're undertaking, and kind of where that falls in terms of consent when it's someone who is not necessarily an expert, quote unquote, in what they're about to do.
Right. Right. A couple weeks ago, I was on a panel called Queer Risk, and I was like, I don't know, I shouldn't be on this panel because I've avoided the R word and also work, which is probably unjustifiable given what I'm talking about. And this too, risk becomes what Norm's saying, thinking about risk is dangerous because it's captured by experts and because the way, and also, primarily because the way risk is racialized, at-risk youth and things like this, and what kinds of interventions that authorizes. So here's but I don't know if this is really answering your question, but the expert, I don't know if they're the experts because actually you don't really need licenses to be tattoo artists and to do all that, right? And to pierce and whatever.
Well, you do, but
you
some
do.
states,
Or is it
yes.
state by state?
It's state by state, but it is like a legal boundary where it would affect if you mess up someone's tattoo and you didn't have a license, they could. Yeah.
Okay, forgive me about that. I'm thinking of some other professions. I don't know. But anyway,
He doesn't even know what he's talking about.
Right. The answer there is just that on facially, so to speak, it is the tattoo is permanently injuring permanently affecting your body or whatever. So I don't know if risk is the most germane question there. Maybe I'll end here, kind of answer your question and tying this back to Lauren, which is in disability scholarship, there's this dignity of risk notion that was kind of widely published and active as a scholarship, right? That the idea is you want to facilitate the part of the social model to get to risk the bad shit too, right? You don't want to just protect them from sex altogether because they have a right to have mediocre sex also, just like the rest of us, temporarily able folks. And in a way, what I ended up saying, and I'm going to convolute this, I was talking about Me Too at the end, because there's Me Too in the book, at the Queer Risk panel, part of what I think is the common thread between, the Me Too gets accused of one thing, right? Aziz Ansari with Harvey Weinstein, the predator with the prankster, the jokester. And I want to say, well, actually, feminism is always about one thing. It's a lumping project. This happened to you, this happened to me. And so you think about, okay. But I think part of what aggregates it is it's all sexual assault or it's all not consensual, right? See the Ansari debate. But that it's men leveraging their gender and authority to deny indexically women abilities to take the risks they want to take.
What?
Right? They don't get to risk having the kinds of sex they might want to have because there's a kind of way in which men are insuring against the risk of failure, right? By sort of leveraging their authority and also sort of denying other folks to get.
Okay, the presentation is about to be over, but is he arguing that consent means that women are not going to be allowed to have the kind of sex that they want to have because consent will prevent them from having what? Did I understand that? Hang on. I know the presentation is 30 seconds from being over, but I want to hear that again.
Or it's all not consensual, right? See the Ansari debate. But that it's men leveraging their gender and authority to deny indexically women abilities to take the risks they want to take, right? They don't get to risk having the kinds of sex they might want to have because there's a kind of way in which men are insuring against the risk of failure.
What
right?
the fuck?
Right?
This guy's a professor at Yale. Are you kidding me?
They get to risk something too. Right? I'll leave it there. Thanks, guys.
No. Well, the one thing that I can agree with him on is if people want to have mediocre sex, they're allowed to have mediocre sex. I guess that is that. But I don't even know what to make of that presentation. Maybe we need to. So a lot of that presentation was grounded in disability studies, and we haven't done a lot about disability studies. And maybe we really should dig into more about disability studies because I feel like I feel like we don't really understand the full breadth of that presentation without disability studies. So it's like it's one of those things where we might have to like watch some more like introductory presentations about that and then go back and watch that presentation again like a year from now and be like, oh, it's like the abolish the family stuff. It's like when we were first getting into like Socialism Saturday and we would watch the abolish the family stuff, we'd be like, this is crazy. And we knew it was crazy, but we couldn't quite put our finger on why. And then we watched a whole bunch of stuff about social reproduction theory. And then we watched all this other stuff about abolish the family. And after like a dozen and a half abolish the family presentations, we went back and watched the previous abolish the family ones, and we were like, oh, we see this on a whole new level now because now we understand all the words you're using. So maybe that I feel like disability studies is on the ascendant. I feel like that's the next big round of bullshit that we're going to have to deal with. And of course, disability studies is under queer theory, so it's all about queering normativity, like pushing back against normativity, that sort of thing. So maybe we need to watch disability studies. Yup, it's true. I'm being ableist by not studying the Crips enough. Well, we'll have to tackle that problem on another day. But guys, that is all we have for today. Now, a couple quick things before we conclude. Number 1, please make sure you join us tomorrow for a very, 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 very special edition of Socialism Saturday, where we will be talking about how romantic love is really a weapon of capitalism. And that's going to be tomorrow at 6 p.m. Eastern Time. I hope you'll be able to join us for that. But I'm thinking this might not even be the last stream I do today. I'm thinking of doing a reaction video to this. I mean, you followed the rules of you're allowed to disagree with me. You're allowed to disagree. You followed the rules of the chat. You weren't a dick. You weren't whining. Like, we just disagree. I'm thinking about doing a reaction video to this tonight. This video from Deb is only 15 minutes long, which means it'll probably take me about an hour and a half to react to. I'm thinking about doing this tonight, but I want to take a little bit of a break first, okay? And so keep an eye out. Maybe let's say like 8:30. Do you want to do like 8:30? Like maybe give me like 45 minutes to like take a break and decompress, and I don't know, maybe like smoke a bowl or something. I'm not going to do that. I would never be high on the internet. But like just like give me a like, it's been a weird day. Give me a couple minutes to relax. And then we'll come back. I'm definitely going to need to get high for this because like it's like I can only take so much Deb in what, like, I can't. Anyway, I will be back in a little bit and we'll do a reaction video to this stupid video that Deb posted thinking she's like the genius of the fucking internet. And we're just going to have a chill night, okay? Chill night. Everyone can agree to that? All right. Mount the like button on the way out the door, guys. I will see you in a little bit. Take care and, I don't know, go get a snack or something. We'll be back.